Hello everyone, welcome to What If Issei Finds Out His Reincarnation Truth and Left Rias Peerage Part 7, Chapter 30. Clash of the Titans. It's always a pleasure to talk to you Lord Thor, and I can't thank you enough for giving me the opportunity to fight against Red Dragon again. I hope that he is up to my liking. Wulfric spoke with cold and bloodlust tone that was very eager to get a good fight, while he bowed to the god of war. I would doubt that, but I will let you decide that. Thor answered as he turned around and motioned Wulfric to follow him. As they got closer to the arena, they could hear yelling and a lot of explosions going off, as if it was a war and not a battle. But that only made Wulfric even more excited to face his opponent. Entering the arena, both warriors saw huge explosions going off as the field was filled with ice and fire everywhere. It looked like all natural disasters hit at the same time. Though to Wulfric, it only served to fire up his bloodlust and warrior spirit to the max as he was grinning darkly. "My lord, you wouldn't mind if I enter now, would you?" Wulfric asked, seeing Lucy send a huge maelstrom of ice at Roswis, who in response sent fireballs. "No, not at all," Thor said, grinning as Wulfric discarded his cloak, took his sword while sprinting to the edge of the audience election before jumping high into the air with his sword in his hands. Back on the field, everyone saw someone flying high into the air while holding what looked like a sword in his hands, which prompted Issei and some of the Valkyries to pull out their weapons, while Issei entered his balance breaker. While both Lucy and Roswis quickly pulled back just in time to miss getting hit by the unknown man. As the girls looked at the newcomer, Roswis started to look pale as she got a good look at the newcomer, while Lucy looked at him with a raised eyebrow just before her eyes widened when she saw a blade coming towards her head. Quickly evading the blade, Lucy fired off her lightning, which the newcomer took head-on without even flinching a bit. What?" Lucy asked in shock before she was pushed away by Roswis, who quickly got to her just in time to evade being stabbed by the blade that was shining with malice. Seeing the distraction he made, Wulfric quickly punched Lucy in the stomach, sending her flying a bit while he tossed Roswis on the other side. This battle, this is what I waited for so long, but a shame there isn't anyone here to challenge me. A really sad truth," Wulfric said in a mocking tone while grinning with battle lust. Elsha, who was in a gear the whole time, immediately entered the mortal land as soon as she heard the voice that she was sure she shouldn't hear. As soon as she landed on the ground, she quickly took hold of Issei, who was about to attack the man she was dreading. "Issei, don't. That man is way stronger than you and your friend. Tell Lucy to pull back now," Elsha said in an emergency tone as she saw who it was. All the while holding back Issei. "Issei, do what Elsha said. I battled this man before and he is a monster in a true sense of the word." Belzerd spoke next, making Issei nod instantly. "Lucy, pull back now, you can't fight him," Issei shouted to Lucy. "Lucy now quickly," Elsha also shouted, causing Lucy to growl a bit before she quickly retreated to Issei. "You okay?" Issei asked as he saw her a bit bruised but not hurt. "I'm fine, love, though that man surprised me," Lucy answered Issei, who was now furious even more. "Boost. Partner, looks like we found out who was sent to fight us," Drake told with a battle lust voice. "Looks like it, Drake, thought I can't help but shiver at the sight of him," Issei replied as he looked at the newcomer who was now at his feet with his blade tightly in his hands with his hair obscuring his face. Wulfric Odin roared in anger, making the man to turn around, seeing the Might All-Father as Odin stood up from his throne. "Yes, my mighty lord," Wulfric answered as he lifted his head up to see Odin, who was releasing tons of power, making everyone shiver in fear. "You dare to disturb this? I thought you learned your lesson when we defeated the chaos about what would happen should you disobey me," Odin roared again, making Wulfric look at him unflinching. "I don't care for those fools, my liege, I only care for battle and carnage. I thought you knew that, and when I heard that there is a Red Dragon Emperor, I couldn't contain myself," Wulfric answered in a dark voice as he turned to face Issei, who was in his armor. "You there, I sense great power in you, you are the Red Dragon Emperor. If you are, come over here and fight me," Wulfric roared as he lifted his sword, pointed it at Issei, while his blade shined in a dark purple color. Seeing as he was ignored, Odin was even more angry as he was about to send his attack towards Wulfric. Thor stepped in. "Father, I told him to do that," Thor said, shocking his fellow gods to the core. "What? Or I will kill you," Odin said as he prepared to kill his son. "Lord Odin." Hearing Issei's voice, Odin stopped for a bit to look at the Emperor. "What do you want, kid?" "I want to fight him now. He almost killed Lucy, and I will not tolerate that," Issei shouted, shocking not only his team, but also the past hosts of the gear and the dragon himself, while Wulfric only smirked darkly. "Ice, don't, you will get killed, he is way stronger than you," Elsha quickly said, while Belzerd only sighed. "What she said, boy, is true, I barely managed to survive him. He is an animal that when tasted blood is going into blood rage." Belzerd gave his 2 cents, but they were all ignored by Issei. "And I don't care about me dying, I promised I will protect those I love and I will do it, even at the cost of my life. Besides, I'm the Red Dragon Emperor, I will sooner or later come against someone who is much stronger than me," Issei said while starting to march forward towards Wulfric, who was chuckling darkly at Issei. Come, boy. I Wolfric will see that your death is as slow as possible and as painful as I can make it. If you can't defeat me, let's see if you are worthy of the name of Dragon Emperor of Domination, the same name that so many had, but only a few were worthy of it, and I will make sure to let you precious loved one see you in the most broken state while I make my way with them. The ha-ha-ha-ha Wolfric spoke in a cold, dark and demonic voice as his aura erupted from his body and his eyes shined ominous black. Boost, X10. Oh, when I'm done with you, you will beg for mercy, trust me on that. Issei said as his eyes turned green by rage he was holding. Issei told his opponent as he slowly started to walk towards him. If Issei was pissed before the arrival of Wolfric, he was now livid. Not only had he watched those close to him fight, but seeing them getting hurt, some even came close to dying, was something that he absolutely hated. And he was very much ready to knock some teeth of the war god in the room, but he managed to restrain himself with a huge help of both Elsha and Belzerd. But now all restrictions were off, seeing that Lucy was almost sliced in half was something that even the two strongest Securities couldn't let happen, so they released their restriction on him and let him go wild, which he was planning on doing anyway. Though they did hold back the other hosts of Drag, so that Issei don't use that horrid form. I like to see you try small lizard. I can already hear your screams of pain, and you're pleading to end your life quickly. I can tell you now that won't be happening. Wolfric told him in a voice that reeked violence and bloodshed. Funny, that was something I also wanted to tell you. Hope you are ready to meet your maker, Issei shouted as he finally took his position and entered his battle stance, which didn't go unnoticed by the seasoned warrior. I see. I know of only two people that use that stance, and both were Drags, me child, who trained you. Wolfric asked as he also went into his position, with his sword in front of him at the angle. You'll just have to beat me to find out. Now enough chit-chat, let's fight, Issei shouted as he was ready to charge and beat the crap out of a man who nearly killed his lover. Gondal quickly appeared before the two, giving them last few rules that were implemented into this duel, making it very clear to two fighters that should they break the rules, they would be begging for death. Now this is the final match on the Asgardian side. Wolfric, the Chaos Champion, Gondal said as she pointed at Wolfric, who was grinning from ear to ear while glaring at Issei with a battle-lust look in his eyes. Before Gondal pointed at Issei, who was glaring at Wolfric with so much hate that it made some think that it was pure luck that he didn't enter that already. On the Red Dragon Emperor's side, Issei Haidu, the Red Dragon Emperor. Fighters begin, Gondal shouted before disappearing, just as both Wolfric and Issei rocketed at each other, with so much force that it made ground where they stood created a massive crater. Wolfric was caught off guard at the speed that Issei had, which didn't give him enough time to react when Issei shot forward, not even bothering to defend himself at this point. Jumping in the air, Issei tucked in his legs and drop-kicked Wolfric in the chest, sending the giant skidding back a few feet. While the attack itself wasn't powerful enough to damage the mighty warrior, it was just annoying to the man, but Odin's keen eye caught onto what Issei was doing, and he couldn't help but show a little grin. What will you do now, Wolfric? This boy is about to teach you a very painful lesson. Odin asked himself, confusing Thor and everyone else, but their thoughts were interrupted by a massive explosion. Issei was blasting at Wolfric with his dragon shots, so fast that the champion of chaos could only put his sword in brass, while taking the shoots that grew more powerful one after another. It surprised everyone that Issei was starting to surround himself by a powerful crimson beam of energy mixed in with green. You will die, Wolfric, after what you've done. Issei's voice boomed as the brute still didn't manage to get out of his defensive position, all thanks to Issei's fury attacks that made it impossible for him. The barrage of energy shots continued for a few more minutes, with each explosion more devastating than the last one. After it was over, everyone could only gaze in awe at the destruction. The whole area was completely dull, as it was just one huge crater that was about 100 meters deep, with only a small patch of land still in the original height. And there stood the Chaos Warrior, panting heavily and riddled with cuts and bruises, even his clothes were torn almost to shreds. But before Wolfric could even attempt at anything, he was hit with so much force that it sent him flying to the arena wall and straight to the wall. But before he got the chance to stand and recover, Issei grabbed Wolfric by the nape, picking him up and chucking him into the wall again. Wolfric shouted as he was slammed into the same wall again, with enough force to leave a large crack on the wall. Something was definitely broken, and he couldn't find out what before he was back onto being the defensive. Through all the red Issei was seeing, but something was clear to all onlookers, he was messing up his moves, and Wolfric took notice and grinned, he would use this to his advantage. Even in this state of fatigue and damage, Wolfric finded the strength to damage and put some serious hurt on Issei. Though what no one knew was Elsha and Belzerd holding back the current host of Drag with all their might that was forcing Issei to mess up his moves a bit. Catching Issei's punch, Wolfric slammed his elbow into Issei's ribs with all the power he could muster, causing Issei growl too in pain, his armor being destroyed in that place. Not letting go of this chance, Wolfric grabbed onto the sides of his helmet. With a quick and powerful jolt, Issei's head went downward while bringing his knee up, slamming it into his head, shattering the helmet altogether. Before quickly delivering a devastating punch to the face that sent Issei flying away. After recovering from the punch, Issei stood straight up, his hair now covering his face as his helmet was destroyed, only now has he realized it. While everyone was waiting to see what the young warrior would do next, some older and experienced ones already felt and knew, now was time for carnage. Issei lifted his head a bit so that everyone can see his face, and some were confused, while some were horrified at what they saw. Issei's eyes were now glowing, but the major difference was that instead of two glowing emerald eyes, one was blood red, while the other was pure emerald, and Auden and Freya instantly knew what was happening, but kept it quiet. They could only hope that Elsha and Drake could contain this. Feeling something running down his mouth, Issei wiped it with his fist before seeing the blood coming from his lips. He then felt something that he never felt before, a pure and unrefined feeling of pure hatred, fury, and satisfaction towards this battle. Showing off his feral teeth and sadistic smirk, Issei roared towards the skies with so much power that sent shivers down everyone's spines, both Lucy's and even the sadistic Arnett's spines. Lucy has never seen Issei this enraged, though she was almost killed so she couldn't blame him. And Arnett felt that she was near the death's door, as the power and brutality Issei showed was something that even in her wildest dreams she couldn't hope to do. And that scarred her a lot. A powerful and mighty Valkyrie who was always ready for a good and thrilling battle, now seemed so scared that she was glad that she didn't have to fight this beast in battle. She was sure that if her or anyone aside of gods and Wolfric fought the Securyute, they would be dead 10 times over by now. The rest of the Pantheon, not including Auden or Freya and Issei's girls, could only shiver at fear and the dread at what they felt and cowered away from the enraged dragon, who was about to show them why the Red Dragon Emperor was feared or respected through all the ages and was a force not to be taken lightly. Even gods and other powerful beings respected the Dragon of Domination for his power and ferocity in battle, and Issei was a perfect example why. Issei's body was now starting to get surrounded by the mixed crimson emerald aura, once though this time even faster before it exploded, revealing his newly repaired armor. However, his aura and power kept growing and growing, scaring even Auden a little. "That's enough you brats, end the show," Auden said quietly but sternly, but it fell on deaf ears. Issei roared into the sky once again, his wings flew open, which in turn showed off instead of 2, Issei now had 2 more, and it was clear to everyone that he ascended to a new level of power. The newly repaired armor was now even deadlier and sharper than before. His claws so sharp that it looked like it can cut through anything, even time and space. His tail was also sharpened, and now had a small mace with spikes on them. Looking back at Wolfric, he roared again before he charged forward so fast that it shattered the ground below him. Getting low to the ground, Issei slammed his foot into Wolfric's jaw, launching him into the sky. Jumping into the air after him, Wolfric was able to block Issei's kick, but was unable to block the punch to the gut that sent him hurtling back to the ground, creating another large massive crater. Holding both his hands out, he started to gather power for his dragon shot, but instead of launching it, he started to compress it, while he still added more power to it, making it slowly increase in size and power. Seeing that there is no way to get out of this, Wolfric grinned. This was exactly how he wanted to fight and to die, a true warrior's death at the hands of a capable and worthy foe, and the boy in front of him was both. He was sure that even the chaos god of battle and slaughter would be more than happy to see and hear about this youth that has so much power and will, but almost unhealthy amount of rage and bloodlust about. But even still, Wolfric's pride and power wouldn't allow him to go out like this, oh hell no, so he stabbed his blade into the ground as he also started to gather his power in front of him. As both fighters gathered their energy attacks to the power they wanted, it was clear to everyone that once fired there was no way to stop them from obliterating everything in their path. Dragon Purgatory Desolation. Chaos Death Star. Everyone shield the battlefield now, Auden shouted. Everyone heeded and followed command, just as Issei shot the ball at Wolfric and vice versa. There were sparks flying as the balls hit, fighting for supremacy. A large explosion occurred in the shield, creating cracks due to the power both warriors used. It would probably be shattered if it weren't for Auden, who used a bit more power than he would have liked to keep the shield standing strong. But the aftermath of the blasts of power were enough for everyone to know that those 2 gladiators were packing serious firepower and were willing to use it. As the dust settled, it gave the audience the chance to look at the 2 warriors that, to their amazement, still stood strong, and they did look like they were hit by a train, but that was to be expected from all those 2 did. Though what made Issei's girls worried was that Issei started to wobble a bit and spit blood, though Lucy explained to them that it was probably because he overused his assets and his abilities in that magnificent fight that sent shivers down her spine as she still remembered the dark sadistic look in his eyes as he charged at Wolfric. Seen enough and not in a mood to see more bloodlust from the 2 men, Auden stood up to get their attention. Though before he could speak, he was shocked to see Wulfric chuckling and smiling at the young man in front of him. "That was some power you put up, young emperor, and I must say, I'm wholeheartedly enjoying this fight. I have to say also that Dragon Rage is extremely powerful, and damn those hit of yours hurt as hell, and that is just how I like my fight." Wulfric spoke with a shit-eating grin on his face that Issei was more than happy to give his own towards the old warrior. "Haha, and here I thought I would have killed you with that. Oh well, you learn something new every day, but I agree with you, so how about it? Ready for round 2? I still have plenty in my tank," Issei roared at his opponent, who just smirked and took his battle pose and got ready for a next round. "By all means come at me, Sekiruite," Wulfric replied as he gave his own battle roar. To say that they were shocked from what Issei just said would be an understatement of that he was on his last leg and he wanted more. Was he hit in the head too strong, or did his last attack short-fused his brain? That was what everyone thought as they looked at the breathless form of Issei, who was grinning like a madman and starting to generate boost again. "Issei, are you insane? You are barely standing. You really want to go for another round?" Drake roared in disbelief at what his partner was doing, and there he knew that Wulfric would just settle for a draw and be done with it, but no. His idiotic partner wanted to fight more. "Issei dear, you should stop now. I know Wulfric and he would gladly settle for a draw and let you off, so please just say I'm done and he will let you go." Alsha also jumped in the conversation, trying to stop the young emperor from killing himself. However, Belzer just took a second to look at Issei and with a soft nod, encouraged him to go for it. Which brought the wrath of the other two companions at him, but before they could do anything to him, Issei decided to give his input. "Guys, chill, I know what I'm doing, so there is no need to. I will admit, I'm spent, but what can I do? If we are in a real fight and an opponent that is way stronger than me fought me, he wouldn't give me time to build up my strength and power. He will attack me again in this shambles state of mind without a second thought. Besides, I think I earned Wulfric's respect, so he won't kill me, kick my butt hell yeah, but kill me no. I say, let him continue to. Would be a good experience for us, a good way to see how he stacks up against a more seasoned warrior that has enough time to learn and refine his skills to the point of knowing we're too strict to kill." Belzerd added, making the other two extremely pissed off. "Belzerd, I swear to every god I know that if he dies fighting that monster, I will personally find a way to erase your sorry ass of the place of the earth in history, so no one will ever know that you existed, you hear me? And before that, I'm going to kick your sorry ass and then torture you before I castrate you, so that when you finally die, you will be in so much pain and fear that you will be wishing you died earlier," Elsha told him, with every word coated in deep venom that made all three males flinch and sweat as they were sure that she would deliver on her threat if Issei died fighting. Shaking his head to remove that thought out of his head, Issei mentally got ready for the next round, his blood pumping with such ferocity and adrenaline was all-time high. Issei smirked before he charged at Wulfric head-on. This caused the brute to smile greatly as he slammed his weapons down before charging at Issei at the same speed. With both warriors injured, it would only be a matter of time before one of them fell, and neither one of them wished for it to be them. Their pride would not allow them to give up in the face of a worthy opponent. To both it would be a great disrespect and huge hit on them. They both reeled back their hands before they both launched them forward, slamming their fists into the others, causing a shockwave. The shockwave was massive enough to shake the whole area, making many of the spectators fall to their knees. Lucy looked up with wide eyes as she witnessed her love fight. All-out fist fight erupted as both kicks and punches were sent on both sides. It was turning into a slugfest as both warriors tried to overpower another, but both were in a stalemate. Issei was, thanks to his boost and rage, overwhelming Wulfric in the power department, but to counter that Wulfric used his overwhelming experience to his advantage. Wulfric sent a kick towards Issei. He simply jumped over his leg, doing a front kick to Wulfric's head. The attack was successfully blocked when he raised his hands up blocking his kick. Grabbing Issei's ankle, Wulfric grinned as he started spin around throwing Issei into the air. Doing a flip and landing on his feet, Issei breathed in through his nose before Issei's mask dispelled long enough for him to breathe fire from his mouth. Wulfric widened his eyes. The attack was enormous for such a human to possess, but it wasn't good enough. Even though the fire was like inferno, it was still not good enough against an opponent of Wulfric caliber, who raised his hand up and created a barrier blocking Issei's fire attack. Issei clicked his tongue in annoyance that his attack didn't succeed, but began to charge again. A sharp pain tore through Issei when he took a step forward. Screaming loudly, Issei fell to the ground holding his stomach as he was still yelling in pain. "You should all relax, he just passed out from all the strain he forced his body to go through." Wulfric calmly spoke as he got near Issei, making Lucy and Cassie take up defensive positions in front of Issei's body, ready to protect him. Seeing this, Wulfric just sighed. Honestly, he expected them to be like this, still it annoyed him to no end. Though he did admit that the both girls looked ready to fight him to the death if needed be for their future master's safety, that he respected. "I won't do anything to him, nor to you all. I'm a warrior, yes, sadistic, yes. But I have my honor, and those that can show me enough power and strength and will to fight and even injure me are the ones that deserve my highest respect, and that boy did deserved it, so I will not claim my prize. Wulfric spoke as he pushed past both girls and looked down at the broken form of Issei, who even in his passed out state was trying to get up. The sight was something that shocked Wulfric. He never saw and expected anyone completely broken and unconscious state who tried to force his will and body to get up. His respect for the kid risen even more. Bending down, Wulfric lightly tapped Issei's chest in a sign of a well-fought battle before standing up and leaving. Auden, who saw it all, was still in so much shock from the battle and Wulfric's behavior to even speak. Though he quickly shook his head and put all of this aside, as he was now focused on getting the young emperor back on his feet and to full health as quickly as possible. Chapter 31. Finding a solution. It was tense atmosphere between them as they all settled in the Great Hall, waiting for any new information about the condition of the Red Dragon, who was currently in a medical bay, where the best medics from Norse were gathered in order to accelerate his healing. It was unnerving to know that even though all the damage that was done to Issei was gone, he was still out of it, even with some very advanced healing abilities like stamina replenishment didn't help in him waking up, which meant that all they could do was wait for Issei to wake up. Though while most were tensed and waiting for Issei's recovery, Wulfric was calm and collected. He was currently enjoying food that was brought up from all of them. The sight of Wulfric eating calmly made some extremely pissed off. Though while they were pissed at Wulfric and wanted nothing short than to beat the living crap out of him, they knew better than that. Wulfric, even in his heavily damaged state, is still a powerhouse and must not be taken for granted. As Chelsea and Cassie were having a conversation with Arnett and Asuka, the rest of Issei's girls were in their own thoughts, were praying to anyone that Issei will wake up soon. The only one missing from the great gathering was Lucy, who stubbornly refused, to the point of others giving up, to leave Issei's side. Though while it did annoy some, it was understood that Issei was very important to the young Lucifugeris, so they let her be. But they did force her to at least eat and rest while someone else watch over him. Please my love, wake up soon. I don't know what I would do without you beside me. Lucy muttered softly to herself as she lightly squeezes Issei's hand, while her royal blue eyes were on the brink of letting tears fall free. All the North was in worry over the mighty Red Dragon Emperor, who proved his worth and power to the gods of the North. Back in Kuo, things were slowly getting ready for the meeting between the great factions and their guests of honor. But as always, nothing would be as easy or normal well for supernatural standards at least. Not even a week after Issei and his harem peerage left, Rias was on the verge of gathering her peerage and marching directly to the Norse faction to bring back Issei. It was a stressing matter to Rias. There she was, a beautiful and powerful girl that anyone would die for, yet the one she desired so much was not giving her a damn second of his time too. To add salt to injury, he was in relationship with another heiress and from the rebel faction, that bitch Lucy Lucifuge. Back in the north of Europe, Issei still hasn't woken up yet, even when his health and stamina had returned to normal, though while he looked stable on the outside, on the inside it was very much a different story. Being glared at by three of the deadliest and extremely powerful individuals was something that Issei was honestly not used to. Knowing that those three had the power to level the world with ease didn't even calm his nerves at all. Issei was in the middle of Elsha's realm, where somehow he ended up tied upside down to the tree branch. He didn't know how. Though what he did know was that he was going to get an earful, and if his bad luck till recently was any indication, he was in a world of hurt also. Braig and Belzard glared at Issei. They were doing that mostly because if they didn't, Elsha would have probably cut what made them male, shove it so far up their ass that they would need a miracle to get it out, and that was something that both the dragon and the strongest Sekiryuite didn't want to experience, not now or ever. They were very pleased by how Issei stood up, fought against one of the most powerful warriors of the Norse realm, and even if they knew that a sadistic battle maniac was using just above a half of his full power, it was still an unbelievable achievement for someone that was so young and was emotionally driven. The battle that all three of them saw was an interesting and enjoyable one, while it also quenched their battle lust that all three had by having a worthy and powerful opponent against who they could fight. It was after all in their dragon nature to fight for dominance, and the stronger the opponent the more of their pride and drive for battle was forcing them to fight. But even if all of them enjoyed a thrill of a good fight, there always had to be a moment where it was wiser to withdraw than go to a certain death, which brought them to this point. Now Ice, do you have any idea as to why we brought you here, and why are you hanging from a tree? Elsha spoke in a sweet, a way too sweet voice for the men around her liking, as an aura of doom enveloped her, daring Issei to answer the question incorrectly or say something stupid to get his ass out of this. Gulping down hard and calming his unsteady nerves, Issei answered in a scared voice that both other males knew that Elsha was the one that made him that way. Is it to lecture me about my stupidity, a charging head first? That is half right, though do you have any more ideas? Elsha said in a bit calmer voice that made all three males sigh in relief for a bit. I might been a bit too close to the edge for Juggernaut Drive. Issei innocently said while trying his hardest not to pass out by all the blood going to his brain. Bingo, you idiot, now that you know why you are here, it's time for you to know just how far you got to it and what would probably happen should you enter. What I will show you isn't what happened, but what would, so you really know what happens when you go berserk. Elsha said as she snapped her fingers, releasing Issei from his prison before casting a spell and making a huge magic circular at the clearing behind Issei, who was rubbing his nose and trying to get his blood back into his hands and feet. As soon as he was able to get himself back to normal, Issei turned around to see what Elsha has casted, and when he saw it his eyes went wide, his face paled, and his whole body started to shake in fear. In front of him in the magic circular that Elsha created was Issei in what he questioned was a Juggernaut Drive armor. Juggernaut Drive appeared very similar to the scale mail armor that Issei had, though it gave a lot more a dragonic appearance to it, and it looked very deadly with its sharp claws, teeth and tail. But what made Issei pale and quake with fear was an aura that had surrounded the Juggernaut Drive armor as the draconian armor roared towards the heavens in signaling his mighty victory and the death that he left behind the battle. It was an aura of extreme dread, bloodlust and death, so much so that Issei was frozen and unable to move even a muscle at the sight of the monstrosity that was in front of him. And the images didn't stop there. After the appearance of the armor, it was the sight that left Issei almost vomiting. Death and destruction were everywhere, bodies among bodies of dead, the whole countries destroyed and devastated. And then the image that made his blood froze and his pale skin to turn paler, while his eyes almost becoming also white. In the middle of the dead lay Lucy, Chelsea, Cassie, Murayama, Caddis, Ravel, Arnett, Asuka, his parents, and some of his friends that he met before all this supernatural stuff happened in a brutalized state. Some of the bodies were left with a limb or two, and some were even beheaded or snapped in half. Seeing Issei like this, and knowing what was probably going through his head, Elsha stopped the image from further going and placed her hand on his shoulder, snapping him from his unmoving state. Issei, dear, don't worry, this didn't happen and it won't happen. I just showed you what would happen if Belzerd and I didn't stop the past users from getting to you. What you just saw is what a Juggernaut Drive does to a user. True, in that form, a Sekiryu is unstoppable along with Hacker Yuku. It was even said that whoever entered their drives first is the winner of the battle. But that is beside the point now. What I'm trying to tell you is that in that form, you have the power of Drake at his prime, and I mean it, just ask that lazy scale lizard. Elsha said while pointing at the red dragon, who growled at being called a lazy scale lizard, while Belzerd just chuckled a bit before he stepped forward towards the duo, getting their attention. And with that power comes a great wrath to yourself. You see, when Drake was sealed into the gear, his anger and his negative emotions were also transferred into the gear, and that is what sadly also transfers to the user. Basics of it are, the more anger and more rage you have in you, the closer to unleashing that horror is. It also comes with a hefty price, one loses his mind and life. The more you are in that form, the more your life energy is required for it. Though Elsha found a way to prevent that from happening, but in your case, it would be your life that is sucked out to power it. So, while it is okay to be enraged or to be angry, you should watch how much you put it out. Belzerd said in a sage voice as Issei was somewhat starting to regain his senses. Is there any way to prevent me from going into that? Issei asked in a shaken tone, while Belzerd and Elsha looked at each other and then at Drake, who seeing the looks of his two strongest users sighed heavily. Yes, there is partner, but in order to do it, you would need to do one of the three following things. Drake said as he lowered his head a bit to look into Issei's eyes, who widened again at hearing this. And those things are? Issei quickly asked, wanting to find out so he could work on them. First is to experience the drive itself and survive it. That would be the easiest but deadliest way of the three. Second is to learn a lost magic, the dragon slaying magic. That is something I sadly can't teach you, since it requires a living dragon with an exposure to its aura constantly, and eating his magic that will help you a lot. That is easiest, but also the longest way. The final is to bath in the blood of a dragon king, and that is almost like the first thing I said, partner, you are in no condition to slay a dragon king. Drake told him in a very serious voice as he made it perfectly clear to his young host that it was almost impossible to stop it. Signing sadly, Issei hanged his head down in defeat before his brain started to think about what Drake said to him once about dragons. And then it clicked into his head that the dragons were still around and in large numbers, no less. So quickly getting his head up, he asked a question that surprised the mighty emperor. Do you know any dragon that can teach me dragon slaying magic, Drake? The hope in his voice didn't get unnoticed by the other two companions there. Signing, Drake shook his head in disbelief, though he should have seen this coming. Yes, partner, I know of a few that could teach you, but before you ask who they are, you should know that you can't learn it from any dragon. You must learn it from a dragon king, since I was an emperor, and there are no other dragons with that rank or power, so you must learn it from the second best source, and that is king. Hell yeah, I don't care what I need to do to get the dragon to train me, I will do it, Issei shouted in excitement at the thought of getting rid of that cursed drive and getting a new power. Which after realizing this, the other three also giggled at the thought of Issei getting even more powerful. But Issei, before that you need to get to the Slavs so you can finish the mission that Serziches gave you and to get the weapon. Alsha said calmly after Issei finished his little victory dance that gave them all a good laugh. Yeah, that looks like it's a bit urgent, can't disappoint the other. So Alsha, how do I get back? Issei said before looking at the blonde mage who giggled and snapped her fingers, which prompted a black hole to appear under Issei, who screamed in surprise as he fell through it, all the while cursing Alsha to the ends of the world. Seeing that Issei was away, Alsha turned towards the two other males and gave them a smile before nodding and disappearing, which was quickly followed by other two, seeing as the discussion was over. Lucy was just about to drift off to sleep as her eyes were slowly closing, her head was ever so slightly going down and towards her lover's bed where he still lay peacefully. Well, that was what she assumed before she heard a soft groan followed by a small growl. Hearing this, her eyes snapped open as she quickly looked towards the bed, her eyes went wide as she saw that the object of her tired and sleepless state was finally in the land of the living, and she couldn't stop herself from jumping on top of him and hugging him with all of her might, all the while shouting in pure joy and happiness that also attracted a lot of curiosity as not a few moments later, the door of Issei's room were blown up as Cassie and Arnett rushed into it to see what was happening. Lucy, what happened? Why did Issei, you are awake, Cassie said in a rush before seeing that the silver-haired was hugging Issei while also having a tear running down her cheek. So, the big bad dragon woke up from his slumber. Princess, you might wanna let go of him if you don't wanna knock him out again. Arnett asked with a grin as Issei was trying to his hardest to get Lucy off him so he could breathe some much needed air, which thanks to Arnett's comment, he managed to get as Lucy squealed in embarrassment and quickly let go of him, all the while apologizing to him, which he just said that it was nothing and that he is now fine. Not long after that, others also entered into Issei's room and were pleased to see that he was finally back, though before he could be released from the room, Auden told him that it would be wise to have a checkup from the medical team that was taking care of him just to be safe. Seeing as it was nothing to get fussed over and he didn't want to be rude in front of the leader of Norse faction, Issei nodded while everyone left, all the while dragging Lucy, who refusing to let go of Issei, though Issei just pat her head and whisper a few words that made her blush madly and started mumbling some nonsense, leaving Issei to chuckle at how easy it was to embers his future queen. It didn't take too long for others to hear footsteps coming towards them, they all seated at the long table in the great hall, chatting among themselves, and after a few more moments, all of them could see the huge iron and wood doors opening as they revealed Issei Haidu, looking perfectly healthy and with a huge grin on his face. And what surprised some was that even Elsha in her golden armor was beside him, having a smile on her face as she giggled at something Issei told her. No doubt. Yo everyone, sorry to keep you worried. Issei stated as he made it to the table, where Auden instructed him to take a sit down, which he did. While Elsha bowed to Auden and Frigg before telling them why Issei was in a coma state. Lord Auden, Lady Frigg, Issei was in a coma state because I put him into it to discuss some very important matters and to make him understand what would happen if we, as in Belzerd and I, didn't intervene during his fight with Wulfric. By the way, I'm glad to see that you didn't mellow down in this time of peace, Wulfric. Elsha said, making some glare at her, some to look in surprise, while the other looked confused. While Wulfric grinned at the female general with a feral grin, which she returned in kind. And what is that important matter that you discussed, dear, if it isn't a secret? Frigga asked in a motherly tone, snapping Elsha from her staring contest with Wulfric. Why, of course, Lady Frigga. What we spoke with Dreg and Belzerd is that during a fight, Issei was extremely close to entering Juggernaut Drive. Elsha said before being silenced by shouts of surprise and disbelief, though they were silenced when Frigga lifted her hand, stopping any more comments and words. Juggernaut Drive, you say? I thought that it is unstoppable, and it's very hard to stop a wielder of booster gear from entering it when he gets to some limit of rage. Frigga said calmly while her eyes told Elsha that she was unnerved by this discovery. Yes, my lady, that is what I said. And the only reason you didn't saw Issei going berserk and killing most of gods and people here is because Belzerd and I fought the other users of booster gear with some help of Dreg, as all three of us would like to see Issei be the first one to escape if you could save from it. Elsha said in a serious voice that gave other gods the shiver since they knew Elsha very well and it wasn't recommended to question her word if you valid your life. I see, then I need to thank you for stopping the worst case scenario, my dear. Frigga said in calm voice. But is there a way for Issei to escape it? Murayama, who was quiet from the very beginning, asked a question that was on everyone's mind. Yes, there is a way. Issei was the one to answer it as everyone turned towards him as he took a gulp of soda before continuing to explain. Greg told me that there are 3 ways to stop it. First is to experience it and survive. Which I for one won't even try or think about it. He said sternly, getting some to release a breath that they held when they heard it. The second is to learn Dragon Slayer magic, which will help me, and the third is to bath in Dragon King's blood, which is to drag as visibly as surviving Juggernaut Drive. As he finished his explanation there was silence as everyone was in shock. Some mainly older gods because they knew what learning dragon slaying magic meant. while others were about the other two way to remove the curse, which one was deadliest than other. Interesting. Wulfric muttered quietly while his face once again featured a battle-lust grin as his eyes shined with the prospect of having an even more excitement match against the Dragon Emperor. So, I guess you will learn dragon slaying magic, Issei. Auden asked as Issei nodded his head towards the faction leader. Then I have something to offer you once we meet at the peace meeting, Auden said with a grin, making Issei smile as part of his mission was successful at least. Though that is for later, I'm here to tell you that in order to gain the weapon that Elsha wielded you need, as mentioned, go to the land of Slavs, but your first destination must be the city of Warsaw. There you will be meeting the Slavic god of underworld and one of the three most powerful gods. God Vels. Now Issei, I must warn you. Auden spoke in an extremely grave and serious voice, making it very clear that this was of utmost importance. The Slav gods may look weak, or they may look like they simply don't care or are fooling around, but that is just a mask that they put to judge anyone that wished to gain something from them. In fact, they are completely opposite of that and will, if insulted or not shown respect, kill anyone without a care in the world. And they do not care if they go to war with devils or anyone else, since they know they could contend with them, and the more bloodlust they feel and the more blood they spill, or the battle is more gruesome, the more they want to fight. I know from experience, as I had a privilege to watch them in a war, and I had to say that they made good on their promises of destroying an entire faction, because they insulted and even sacrificed their followers. Also, I need to mention this, well, we here in Asgard have two units of, you could say, bodyguards, the Valkyries and Asgardians. All three of head gods have their own units. I think you heard of them. For the west it's Winged Hussars, for the east it's Perrin's Royal Guard, and for the south they are Order of Red Dragon. Auden said, making some younger gods of north to turn a bit green as they knew from the aftermath of some battles, the sheer brutality that followed those elites of the elite units of Slavic lands, and they could only shiver in dread and fear at what would happen if all three gods decide to march all three of those killing machines to the battlefield. And they then remembered that Elsha was in command of one of those death-bringing units and could only cower a bit from her, which brought her to grin at them, making her even scarier. Now on to Vels. Well, yes, he is the god of underworld, he doesn't have many needs and is, in fact, a very good to us and is helping a lot of his followers and many other gods in need. All you need to do is show him respect, and if he indeed needs something you do it without a question, as he is on who could sway Perrin to help you, and if you can get him on your side, you can be assured that Perrin will talk to his brother, the god of war that is in the south, to ease a bit on his test that will sure to be even more gruesome or dangerous than what we put you all through. Hearing all this, Issei could only gulp in fear as he could see that even some other gods and even Wulfric shivered as Auden spoke about the Slavic god of war. And if a mere mention of him sent shiver down some of the most sadistic and powerful warriors in the realm, then the god that is mentioned needed to be extremely powerful and ruthless. I guess I will need to go to the west first if I don't want to die gruesomely, right, and have a chance. Issei asked, only to get a nod from the All-Father. And you don't have to worry, the messenger was sent from us to the west to let them know that you are coming, so you won't have any problem in entering their lands. After all, even if you are with the Devil's faction, Slavs respect and honor their allies and will not do anything to ruin their alliances if they can help it. I will also be sending Asuka and Arnett with you, so that will reinforce your claim, as the Norse representatives will be there. Now you go and prepare you to leave in a day. Auden told them as they nodded and left, leaving Auden to think about an upcoming meeting with his old friends and some new blood that will sure to be interesting. Chapter 32. Something's best forgotten. As Issei and his companions prepared for the upcoming trip to Poland and its capital to see the Slavic god of underworld, Issei told Lucy to go and call the girls to come to his room so that they could discuss what are their plans and to finally get an explanation from Cassie about her past that hunted her and to see if there is any way to help her. Nodding her head, the mighty heiress did what was told through on Issei's request. She didn't told the girls why he was calling them, and not half an hour later Issei's group was assembled in his room, still not knowing why they were called, and the person who called them wasn't there. Though just as they were about to go and search for him, Issei entered the room with two plates, one with drinks and other with some small snacks, where there was everyone's favorite on it. Seeing them all there, Issei smiled as he put it down on a small coffee table, before leaning on the wall looking at the girls who were a bit unnerving at his serious gaze. And they knew that what was about to be said would be indeed serious. Well, I'm glad that you all came here. Issei told them with a smile before he chuckled at hearing Caddis mumbling about him being an asshole for even thinking about them not coming. Now I called you all here to discuss about the trip to Poland and something that I personally think is way overdue, but better late than never. It's about Cassie and her past. Issei said sternly as he heard Cassie gasp before lowering her head and giving him a nod. Good, now first is a trip. From what I gathered from Elsha and Auden, we should be at the border of the realm around noon. From the border we will be escorted to the capital by a squad of wing hussars and a battalion of the regular army. I was instructed to tell you that whatever happens to stay calm and do not show any aggressive behavior, and that also applies to you girls. Issei said while giving a small glare towards Lucy and Cassie, who whistled in innocent before he looked at all the girls who all nodded their heads. As you heard, we will also be going with Arnett and Asuna. Both were there a few times already, and from what Arnett told me, it won't be until we get to Warsaw that we need to worry. What do you mean by when we get there we need to worry, Issei? Candice asked as she took a few bites of a chocolate bar. Yeah, I don't get it either. I thought we need to be wary of them from the beginning. Chelsea said as some girls nodded their heads in agreement. Yeah, well, that would be true if the one that commands this squad of the elite unit isn't Asuna's fiancé. So even if he would be a problem, Asuna is there to help us, and we also have Cassie's new rival, Arnett, on our side. Issei answered with a smirk. Okay, though what is waiting for us at the capital? Cassie asked in a shy voice as she was still a bit uncomfortable since after this it was her turn to speak. Sadly that I don't know yet, though be prepared for anything. Issei responded with a sigh while pinching the bridge of his nose. Well, either way, expect a good thing, but prepare for the worst case basically. Lucy told everyone in a serious voice, and everyone nodded again in confirmation. Seeing as they were done with the trip part, Issei coughed in his hand, getting attention from the girls who looked at him, only to see him looking at Cassie, who had her eyes wide as she knew what he was getting at. And then now? Yes. Now Cassie, I know it must be hard for you to tell, but as your comrades, we need to know so we can start fixing whatever it is, your body, mind or spirit. Issei sternly said as he took Cassie's hand and gently lifted her feet from her position. Boo, but I can't, it's too painful. Cassie responded, her head down with her hair blocking everyone to see her eyes, though even if they couldn't see them, they knew instinctively that there were tears in her eyes that were trying to come out. Seeing her like that, Chelsea stood up and walked over to the speedster and hugged her gently, all the while whispering calming words to her, which after a minute or so managed to calm the greenette down enough. Cassie, don't worry, even if it's something horrible we will be there for you, look around you, all of us did or felt something that we are still having nightmares. I'm also barely coping with my past. I used to be still an assassin. I killed without remorse, be it man, woman or even children. Lucy here was in a war, she was forced to kill also without remorse. He slaughtered entire battalions of soldiers on a battlefield. Chelsea stopped for a moment to look at Lucy, who gave a sad sigh as she nodded her head. Mura and Kat, well, they didn't have any bad experience from what I can tell in the past, so I can't say for them. And there is our future king, Issei the Red Dragon Emperor. The boy turned man, killed in the most heartless way possible only to be revived and used as a pawn literally. The one that saved all of our lives at the Battle of Kuo, and the one that a few days ago showed a tremendous amount of power, and not just in terms of strength, but of will. Chelsea said with a smile on her face as she looked at Issei, before winking at him. You know, we all have our demons that are hunting us. Some are bigger than others, while some are more painful. Cassie finished her little speech, and as soon as she felt Cassie's grip on her increase, as if she was clenching to her for a dear life. Cassie, we know that it is painful, but like Chelsea just said, we all have our demons that we need to conquer. Lucy is a prime example of it. She has spent her last how much again, 30, 40, heck maybe even 50 years in isolation, all the while waiting for her time to die. So if you don't tell us what is eating you, we can't help you. Issei softly told her as he gently put his hand on her shoulder, giving her a soft nod to let her know that she isn't alone and that they wouldn't leave her on her own. Looking at him and then at others who gave her a nod, Cassie took a big breath to calm her nervous nerves down. Seeing as she was willing to tell her tale, everyone took their position and awaited her story. Flashback 10 years ago, in the dark and unforgiving evening, things have turned from bad to worse for the young Lockhart girl, not knowing what will hit her and will scar her for the rest of her life. She was at home, seemingly safe and sound from the dangers that lurked outside her house. And as everything seemed fine until there was a sudden slam coming from the door at the back entrance. She was startled, afraid even, but thought that it could be her parents coming home from their respective workplaces and having a fight over something again. But unfortunately for her, it was anything but what she thought. The racket was created by two men, all in dark robes with masks on their faces, raided in, smashing the door and everything in their sight, possessions, windows, plates all over the living room and kitchen. Cassie looked over the edge of the stair on her upper floor, only to gasp in horror. She couldn't believe or bear to watch what was going on around her. Her gasp was just loud enough for the man to hear her, and as they turned they saw her making a quick escape to her room. That made the two men smirk with satisfaction as they turned and run up the stairs towards her room. Inside her room, Cassie was frantically trying to call anyone who could help her, but to her horror, the phone lines were cut, which meant that she was all alone. So she opted to do the only thing what she could, and that was to flee by jumping from her window on the first floor. Unfortunately, and sadly, the greenette didn't make it. As soon as she was close to the window, the door of her room was blasted open, and she could even think she was grabbed, bundled, gagged, taped and tied up, all thanks to the quick work of two cloaked males that intruded her house. They made a even quicker exit, taking a bandaged Cassie with them and throwing her into the back of their old worker's van before locking it. "Are you sure she's the Lockhart girl?" one of the kidnappers asked, wanting to be sure that the plan does go well accordingly. The other, driving the van, nodded and smirked underneath his mask, confirming that they found and captured their target. "Positive, brother. We have found what we've come here for. Now it's time to make our message loud and clear to the Lockhart family by using their precious little daughter. Oh, I can't wait to see what the boss is going to do to her. I only hope we can have a bit of fun with her also." Hearing this, Cassie's eyes widened, her struggling to get out of the bounds of tape and rope increased quadruple as her thoughts were filled with the absolute worst that could ever happen to her. She even began to break down mentally as she was in tears, slowly running down her cheek, whimpering and crying, all sounds muffled by the tape covering her mouth in the process so that she couldn't make any sounds to attract unwanted attention. One of the kidnappers turned his head, looked at the poor girl with a sadistic amusement before he scoffed, shaking his head at her, not really impressed by her reaction. "What a weak, pathetic girl," he said before turning back and facing the van kept going further and further away from her home. After what seemed to be hours, or even a lifetime on Cassie's case, they have arrived at a run-down abandoned warehouse just outside the city. The force of the brakes has woken the poor greenette up, still tied and taped up, not knowing that the nightmare is far from over. "This must be the gathering place, brother, let's go and meet the employer," the driver declared, to which his passenger nodded and walked to the rear doors of the van, swiftly opening it before grabbing the now terrified and horror-struck Cassie, who with as much as strength she had left, tried to scoot away from him, but all was in vain, as the thug took her swiftly before hitting her neck, making her unconscious before carrying her into the darkness inside the rundown warehouse. Inside was all black, and only a small amount of light was seen as candles were lit and slightly warming the place up. The place where they were was occupied by other people dressed in black robes, all male. But one of them was embroidered with gold stitching and patterns, with a hood covering his hair and making it only so that his light blue eyes were visible. The golden one stood beside what appeared to be a torture rack, which was modified to allow the capturers to do as they pleased to the unfortunate victim. As the two brothers slowly took the captive down the blood-red carpet that decorated the bare and ransacked warehouse, they slowly made their way to the rack and strapped her into the device, whilst removing the tape and rope, forcefully making Cassie jerk back into the land of the living with a painful yell. The man in a black and gold suit smirked, seeing everything taking shape as he stepped forward, leaning closer to the tied-up greenette, who was now fearfully backing her head away from the man who was looking into her eyes, as if her own soul was seen. With one last smirk, he struck her with all his might, making her fall backward, bring the chair down with her, which prompted a cry of pain to shoot out of her thoughts as blood started to go from her lips. "Pick her up, we are not done yet with her," the man in charge ordered as the thugs quickly brought her back up again facing the man. "Why are you doing this to me?" Cassie slowly and shakily asked with her head still dizzy from the sudden hit. "Oh love, you really want to know?" the man asked, and before he could let Cassie say anything, he again slapped her, making her ogling scream in pain before he forcefully brought her up by grabbing her hair, making the poor girl scream even more. "Well, sweetheart, it is all thanks to your father," the man said before he spat it in her face. You see, he was so full of himself and he was so sure that he could become a big shot, so he asked for a loan. Now that wouldn't be normally a problem. But you see darling, we gave him $3 million and as any good business we gave him a year to repay me, but as soon as he got the job running he didn't pay back, so we are going to use you as a way of getting my money back," the man said as he again struck Cassie with his free arm, who was now on a borderline of going unconscious again, but what she heard sent chilling feeling down her spine. "I'm sure I and my boys here are going to enjoy you. You are very well developing for a preteen. Don't worry, maybe some of my men would go easy on you. Well, some of them at least, maybe." The boss finished with a dark chuckle as he was sure he was going to enjoy this, while Cassie was in tears. Flashback end. All the while Cassie was telling her story, the group around her were filled with sorrow, anger, hate, horror and a lot more. Though while the girls were in horror at hearing this and guessing what had happened next, Issei was very close to exploding in pure rage. He was extremely pissed off and ready to go wherever was needed to kill the ones that did those unspeakable things to his friend. Sure he was, and if he is honest with himself, still is a huge pervert, but even he wouldn't even in his most darkest and vile thoughts think or do those things. But right now he needed to comfort the girl that he forced to relive that horrifying past. "Cassie," Issei slowly muttered as slowly made his way towards her. Cassie, who was sobbing, crying and choking on air from the memories of that dreaded night, as if on instinct, lifted her head to see him coming towards her, only for her to quickly back away for him while all but screaming at him. Please just leave me alone, please." Seeing what made her even worse, Chelsea stood from her position next to crying Cassie and made her way towards Issei, who looked downright horrible now. "Issei, come with me, will you dear?" Chelsea asked as she walked past him and out of the room, only to be followed by Issei a few moments later as he looked at Cassie with his eyes full of rage and sorrow. His eyes even made a few contacts with other girls who gave him a slow nod for him to leave and to let Cassie in their capable hands. With a heavy heart, Issei nodded and left. As Issei exited the room, he turned his head to the side to see Chelsea waiting for him a few meters away with her back pressed against the wall, her head down and her breathing hectic. "Chelsea, you okay?" Issei slowly asked as he put his hand on her shoulder, making her jump a bit from the sudden touch, as her mind was preoccupied with her own dark past. "Why yeah, Jay, just thinking about everything that I did in the past, Lucy's past and now what we learned from Cassie," Issei. The Auburn assassin said slowly as she turned her head to look at Issei, her eyes full of tears that were falling freely down her cheeks. "Chelsea," Issei whispered before he took quick steps and enveloped the young. I just can't handle it anymore," Chelsea whispered as dropped down on the floor, her knees pressed up to her chest as she just cried. Seeing her like this made Issei even worse. He just didn't know that this small discussion could turn this bad with his whole team almost breaking down, but he needed to do something to start bringing them back, and from the looks of things the first that needed his help right now was Chelsea. Making his way toward her, he also sat down with his hand going around her neck, slowly bringing the crying girl towards him into the hug. "Hey Chelsea," Issei whispered, but all in response he got was a few chokes and sob which made him froze. "Hey, Chelsea, it's all going to be alright, I'm here for you, and so are all the other girls in the room. We aren't going to look down upon you or leave you. We are all together and we will be by each other's side and protect one another, being there when it matters the most. You already did a lot during the whole Hikobiel shit. If it wasn't for you many would have died, you saved the world by stopping Kiba and getting Lucy away far away from fighting. And I won't leave you, especially since that crazy Chica Kame is still out there trying to slice both of our necks." Issei slowly said as he rubbed her silky smooth hair, slowly making her sobs a bit lower as she looked up into his eyes, her own blood red from the tears. "Why you are not laying to me? Why you will be here for me? Why you won't just leave me?" Chelsea asked, her voice shaky as her eyes looked directly into his to see if he was going to lay to her. "On my name and honor as a Dragon Emperor, I, Issei Haidu, won't leave you or anyone behind. I will always be there for you, Cassie, Mura, Caddis, Lucy, Elsha. Whatever you need, want or desire, as long as in my power, I will do it for any of you. I will be your shield, your support pillar, a shoulder to cry or an ear to listen to whenever is something wrong or you have some kind of a problem." Issei answered her with passion as his eyes showed love, will to protect and make her happy. Hearing his answer and seeing the resolve in his eyes burning, Chelsea with her unsteady hands gripped the collar of his shirt and with a yank lowered his head just enough for her to kiss him on the lips, effectively shocking Issei by her sudden action, though his shock lasted short as he heard her giggle a bit, her cheeks and eyes still puffed from crying. "Well, you can start doing what you just told me by making me an official member of your peerage when you get your pieces, my dashing king," Chelsea said with a beautiful smile, to which Issei grinned and took her lips, which made her turn to be shocked. "It will be my honor to have you in my peerage, my vanguard, Chelsea Dalton," Issei declared with a grin. "And it will be my honor to call and serve you, my king, Issei Haidu Lucifuge," Chelsea said with a smile as she lowered her head on his chest, enjoying the warmth that his body produced. While this was going on, Lucy was silently watching the scene with a smile on her face. He, Issei, managed to bring her back from the brink of self-destruction. He now saved Chelsea. She didn't have a doubt in her mind that he will do the same for Cassie when she calms down a bit. "Now, remember what I've told you, as soon as you cross the border, you are Ned or Asuna do the talking. You're already almost there," Freya said in a calm tone while teasing the two Valkyries. "Like I had a choice in the matter. You know how she gets when she has a chance to go to her darling," Arnett said while smirking at Asuna, who was a blushing mess at this point, and the sudden interruption made by Issei and the girls was not helping, especially since she saw a huge knowing grin that was thrown towards her from Lucy and Chelsea. She had a suspicious that the silver head heard it while the Auburn girl was no doubt spying them, but it looked like Lady Freya ignored her or simply let her attend it, since nothing especially secretly was told. "Lady Freya, we are here as you requested. I do hope we aren't interrupting you," Lucy calmly said as Freya nodded her head with a smile. "Oh, my dear, not at all, I was just finishing here. Though now that you are here it will do you also good to hear it," Freya told them as they paid even more attention to the Queen of the Norse. "Now, Red Emperor, as I was just telling Arnett and Asuna, when you cross the border let them do all the talking. They are familiar to the guards and will have an easier time. Also, when the wing hussars appear, try to be as friendly as possible and do whatever they say. After all, you are in their home, so you must follow there. Before I forget, there is a universal rule for East, West and South Slavs. Whenever you're given to eat or drink, you must take even a bit of it as not to disrespect the host. It's their tradition, so better follow it, though a fair warning, their drinks pack up a nasty punch," Freya said as Arnett started to laugh. That is an understatement of the millennium, my lady. You know full well how Thor and others were after a drinking match against those monsters, hahaha. Arnett laughed along with Asuna, which was quickly joined by Freya, who was giggling at the thought of her sons and husband being dragged back to the city by Perrin's royal guard, some red dragon knights and a few of wing hussars, who were grumbling about how they lost a stupid bet and were forced to deliver them back and all that. But what was the funniest thing was when they delivered them, they just dropped them, like sacks of potatoes, and left while swearing a vengeance on their fellow comrades for this. Ah, yes, that is still something that I'm keeping over his head when he goes out with Azazel. Freya said, stiffing her giggles as much as possible, though she failed miserably seeing the confused faces on the Red Emperor's host. After calming down a bit, she explained what happened in the ass-kicking that she gave Odin and Thor, which made Issei and his company to laugh while sending Asuna and Freya into a struggle to find breath, while Arnett was on the floor laughing and remembering the scenes that were outside battle her dearest. Finally, managing to calm down enough, Freya, along with Arnett and Asuna, brought Issei and his group to Odin, who, seeing his wife and his two bodyguards having red cheeks, couldn't help but not raise an eyebrow, which prompted Arnett to suppress her laughter with Asuna to giggle, while every so often hitting her in the ribs to stop her, which didn't help at all and only made her laugh even more. You know what? I won't even bother to ask what you three did to have you all so red, but that is for later. Odin said while having a good idea about what was talked, and he was damned sure he didn't want to find out anytime soon, since he had a lot of bad luck when it comes to Freya and Arnett. Now Arnett, I have a special mission for you, it is important that is done. Odin said seriously, making Arnett stop her laughing to look at the All-Father seriously. And that mission is, my lord? Arnett asked quickly, wanting to know what to prepare for. The mission is to follow and act as Red Dragon's bodyguard until you reach the east. From there you will get your own team that will be sent to you for the annual parade that would be held in the capital at the Red Fortress. I received a message from Perrin, he wished to put together the most grandiose military parade ever held. He even invited other realms to come, such as Greek, Roman, Hindu and a few more that would hopefully come. He also said that he would hold a tournament and the winner of it would receive a dragon scale armor made from the oldest dragon scales that they had. Odin said, making Arnett's eyes shine brightly as her grin slowly started to creep onto her face. That slowly started to terrify the old god, as he knew that what he just unleashed onto the world would be a catastrophe. And could only pray that Arnett doesn't go overboard. Oh, that would be done without a problem, my lord. Arnett said in a sing-song voice, terrifying everyone present even more than her crazy bloodlust grin. If I could say something, Lord Odin. Issei questioned as he was silent till this moment, seeing as it wasn't his time to speak. Yes, Red Dragon. Why would Arnett need to be my bodyguard? Issei asked, a bit irritated at the thought of having someone looking over him. Ah, I see what you are asking. Well, to answer your question, you can say it is a tradition that both Norse and Slav faction developed during our time as allies in the war against someone that I really hope you don't ever have to face, my boy. It was a decision that stuck after it and become something akin to the tradition. Odin said calmly as Issei calmed himself as he heard the answer of the old geezer. Well then I can't complain too much about it. Good, since you're scheduled to leave in 2 hours. I suggest you all relax and enjoy the city. Oh, and everything you would want is on me, so go and take anything that you would need or want. Odin said with a calm voice as he smiled at Emperor's Peerage that had stars in their eyes as they heard this. Are you really okay, Lord Odin, with us buying a lot of things? Lucy asked, a bit confused as to why the mighty god would do that. Well, young Lucifuge, think of this as my way of saying sorry for all that we put you through. Oh, an emperor. Odin answered the silver beauty before his attention returned to Issei. Yes. There is someone who would want to have a few words with you. Go down that path and you will find him. Odin said with a bit of anger in his voice as he pointed the road behind Issei. Okay, well girls, have fun shopping. I will see you in a bit. Issei said as he started walking away from the girls who waved back as they went the opposite way. As Issei was making his way towards the mysterious person that wanted his presence, he couldn't help but feel a bit of dread coursing through his veins. After all, he didn't know that many people in Asgard are Norse faction as a matter of fact, and those that he knew were left in the room that he just exited, so that left him with only those that wanted his guts, and his gut was telling him that he was about to meet someone that wanted his head. As he was getting closer and closer to the end of the corridor, he could practically feel the power of chaos that he felt before. But unlike last time, this time the power was unleashed and it was suffocating him as his instincts screamed at him to turn around and run far away. But against his better judgment he pressed forward and exited the path that led to the huge balcony that was overlooking the city, and at the far side of it, there stood Wulfric in his battle armor and weapon at his back. As if feeling his presence, Wulfric turned towards Issei and grinned as he waved him to come closer to him. This power, it was a long time since I felt it, it looks like the end time is coming closer and closer. Belzard said in Issei's head, making Issei confused. What are you talking about? What end times? Issei asked. Issei, trust me when I say this, you don't want to experience that, but knowing our luck it's something that we can't curve around. I will tell you more when we are somewhere secluded. Belzard said, making Issei sigh before refocused on Wolfric. What Belzard say is true, Ice, that is an extra melodangerous thing to talk about in public. Lives were lost by only whispering about it. Alsha said in extremely serious tone, making Issei gulp a bit. Oh okay, we will talk a bit later then. Issei replied, getting a hum in acknowledgement from his predecessors. Betting his barring again, Issei closed in on Wolfric, who was looking at Issei with a cold and creepy smile that sent shivers down his spine. Issei, I have a few questions for you to answer, Wolfric said in a creepy cheerful voice as Issei gulped even harder. And that question is? Issei asked in as calm as possible way. Oh, you don't have to be so fearful of me. I have nothing against you. Our fight showed me your power and will and you earned my respect, so calm down. As for question, let's start with how you learned that style of fighting. And who, except Alsha, is awake? Wolfric asked in a calm voice as he looked Issei in the eyes. Belzard taught me that fighting style, though he said he learned it from someone else, and he is the only one aside from Alsha that is known to me. I see, well, on to another question, are you really ready to learn Dragon Slayer magic? Yes, I'm as ready as much as possible, though I still need to see where I can learn it from. Issei said with a small frown which was understandable to the seasoned warrior. I see, well, what I can only tell you is that when you learn that magic, I want to be the first one to experience the thrill of fighting it. After all, you will be the first ever Dragon Emperor who knows the ancient magic as that. And I can hardly wait to test the power you will have. Wolfric said with a huge battle grin on his face as he lifted his right arm towards Issei, who accepted the handshake and could only grin in return at the prospect of fighting Wolfric again. Even though he lost the battle against a warrior of the north, he was sure that he would soon get his little revenge on him, and that was worth it. Chapter 33. Welcome to the West. Soon it was the time for departure, and it was led by Arnett and Asuna, who, while one was happy to soon see her fiancé, the other was grinning like a madwoman at the thought of a few good battles that would soon await her and her team, and that brought a low chuckle from her that made a few people step a good few steps away from the crazy red hair. It took about 4 hours for the newly formed group to reach the border between the factions. As they were crossing it, the group heard the trumpets of war blowing. No matter where Issei and his group looked, they couldn't find where the sound was coming from or see where the troops who blown the horns were coming from. That was until they looked at Arnett and Asuna, who were looking up in the sky with one having a huge smile while the other had a small smirk on her faces. Looking up, the group was left speechless as what they saw was a sight to behold. At least 50 winged Pegasus that were decked with all sorts of armor. As the company of soldiers started to descend towards the group below, Arnett decided to give her charge final info that would benefit them. Listen up, guys. Well, both Asuna and I know them very well and are friends. You must remain proper, oh yeah, and you need to go through a few exams to see if you can enter their lands. We all did it, so just so you know. Arnett said with a smile as she turned and watched as Asuna flew towards the first knight that landed, almost making him fall from the horse from the impact. Honey, I missed you so much, Asuna shouted, making a few knights and Arnett laugh out loud at the never-boring moment between the Valkyrie and the winged hussar that was struggling to get up. I miss you too also, dear, but can you let me go? I have a few things to do beforehand. The knight asked, making Asuna pout, but complied as she helped him up and hand, made her way with him towards Issei and his group. As the duo approached Issei, he could tell that the one who was holding Asuna's hand was the captain of the regiment. His black armor and dual swords on his back were enough to tell him that, while the unit looking from the other soldiers were more spear-orientated, this warrior was sword specialist and a good one at that, as it was not easy to wield one let alone two. Hello and welcome to the western parts of the Slavic lands. I'm Kazuto, the captain of the 33rd Winged Hussar Regiment, also known as Quick Stab, and the one that will escort you to the capital. Kazuto said with a small bow as Issei stepped forward in front of his group with a small grin on his face. My name is Issei Haidu, Red Dragon Emperor, and this is my group. Issei said with a small bow as he introduced the girls one by one to the young captain, who politely introduced himself again. Well, now that the pleasantries are over, let's get down to the business. I heard that you guys are here to talk to Lord Vels. Well, I would like to escort you there now. We need to do some tests on you so we can know that you are legitimately here for that. Though don't worry, it's nothing severe, it's a simple process really. Arriving at the capital was not like what they expected, it was more like when you get into Kuo, a beautiful city that was well developed and brimming with life and nature. It was a stunning sight to behold as they made their way still on Pegasus's backs. As they got closer and closer towards the city, they could feel that they passed a barrier of sorts, and like someone flipped the switch, everything changed. The beautiful city was replaced by a magnificent castle, with its walls towering at least 100 meters, and on every 30-40 meters were guard towers covering 360 all around the massive wall, while the first line of defense was an almost electrical barrier that, from what the group gathered, was more like an eye of the storm, with over-the-top high voltage. It was clear that the defenders of the city had a lot of knowledge about what was the easiest way to defend it, and if some spears and armor here and there in front of the wall was any indication, it was a very gruesome but effective way. The shout was easily heard from the walls as the hole appeared in the barrier, letting the group to enter the city without a problem. Entering the royal city of the west was easy, as it was already known that the group was going to come, and being brought with the winged hussars was a signal to the inhabitants and the guards that their ruler was awaiting them, and it was extremely poor for the ruler to wait. As they closed in towards the royal citadel, they were greeted by, from what Keziah told them, were the elite of the elite winged hussar troops, the Griffin Legion, a personal guard that has over 1,000 victories and are only sent to the front line if the situation on the front is so gruesome that it's almost catastrophic. Though while those warriors are extremely rich in experience, they still train for over 10 hours daily, just to stay and improve their already extremely immense powers and skills, and are some of the battle-ready at any time troops for Lord Vels to call upon should the situation request. And even from the distance everyone from Issei's group, even Asuna and Arnett, could easily tell that even if they all combine, it would be a hard-pressed battle to even defeat a single soldier from Griffin Legion, let alone more, and they could see there were almost 2,000 of them. Don't worry, they are all good men. Some of them are heroes, kings, warlords and even regular soldiers that impressed the Lord Vels with their deeds and or behavior, even to the defeated or wounded, that made them pick champions of Griffin Legion. Some of them even trained me in swordsmanship, and while some trained to train me in magic, I can tell that that's not for me. But if you ever need advice, they are the best source of it. Kazuto told them with a smile as they were at the foot of the citadel, where some members of the Legion started to approach them, making Kazuto fall to his knee, which was followed by others. The man was wearing golden armor similar to that of Elsha's, but was clearly oriented towards the west faction of the Slavic, was a bit shorter than Issei. He had white hair with a long white beard with a few scars on his face, while his eyes were a hardened brown color, showing that the old man saw a lot of the world and had a lot of knowledge of how things run. He, in his hands, held a short cavalry sword that was an obsidian colored with a few feathers, from what the group could say was griffin, on the handle that was made from pure gold. All in all, the man before them was impressive, and the power that they could feel was even more so, as they felt if the man in front of them wanted he could easily squash them like bugs, even if they all combined together. By Kazuto, it was a long time since I saw you indeed. Oh, and I see that you brought company with you. Vladislav said in a soft and gentle tone as he smiled at his old pupil, who he could easily say was the best he ever trained. Before he directed his eyes towards the rest who could only look at the powerhouse in front of them. Yes master, here is Red Dragon Emperor and his team that came from Norse with Arnett and Asuna as their bodyguards. My regiment was appointed to see them escorted from the border to here to meet Lord Vels. Is the lord in the citadel by any chance? Kazuto said, making the old man nod before grinning a bit at who accompanied Form Norse. Oh, and I was wondering why Lady Faye wanted your company, but looks like I found my answer, haha. Vladislav laughed a bit while making the lovers blush a bit before he composed himself. Oh, and where are my manners? I haven't introduced myself towards the Red Emperor and his entourage. My name is Vladislav of the Piast family. Ruler of Poland in the medieval age and now the Grand Commander of the southwest part of the Slavic lands. As well as the commander of the 12th Griffin Legion. It's a pleasure to meet you all. Vladislav said while chuckling as he saw some girls look at him like they saw a ghost, which from what he could figure out was due to them being from Europe. But how are you still alive, sir? We learned that you died in the 14th century, Cassie said while being white as a ghost, making Chelsea and the kendo duo look at the man in awe. While Lucy just shook her head as she knew that he was revived by the god of the Slav. Ah, well that is because I was resurrected by Lord Vels to be one of his royal, as you can see, I'm still here. But onto your question, Kazuto, no, Lord Vels is currently at Moscow preparing the parade with Lord Perrin, so I suggest you head there, though before you do that please stay the night here so you can recover your stamina. I know how tiresome it can be to go from one capital to another, even if you have magic at your rest will inform the Lord Alexander Nevsky, the commander of Boyars, that you are coming, so that he will know and tell Lord Perrin and Vels to expect you. I'm sorry for this, Red Emperor, but it was something that we didn't expect for our lord to be summoned by his brother, I hope you can forgive us for this. Vladislav answered with a smile, making everyone nod in Issei to say it was not a problem at all. So, I guess we are free to explore the city then if it's not much of a problem. Murayama asked with a gleam in her eyes, as this was the opportunity of the lifetime to see what all the cities of Slav lands had to offer, and her question was answered in a form of a soft chuckle from the seasoned warrior who knew already that the girls were all eager to see it, even Arnett and Asuna, who he knew for some time already loved to go sightseeing the capital of the West. I don't see a problem, though try to get back before midnight. And if you get lost, just ask for directions for a place, and everyone will tell you how to get here or even escort you here. Vladislav said, making the girls cheer in joy while Issei and Kazuto just shook their head. Well, what are we waiting for, let's go go go, Cadis yelled as she grabbed both Murayama and Chelsea and started sprinting towards the gate so fast that it formed a cloud of dust where they were making others sweat drop at the scene. Well, Cassie, if you want, you can come with me, I know a few top blacksmiths that have some good weapons for cheap prices to buy. Arnett said, making Cassie smile as she nodded and left with the red-haired Valkyrie, while Kazit and Asuna also left, making only Issei and Lucy the ones to stay behind. Yo Lucy, I have an idea. Issei said, making Lucy to look at him with a raised eyebrow. And that is, how about we go on a date? It's been a long time since we've been to one, and while we are at it, we can explore the city. Issei said, making Lucy smile before she nodded a few times. I love the idea, let's go, I heard that the Slavic dishes are some of the most unique and delicious. Lucy said as she took Issei's hand and started to make her way away from the citadel, while in the background, Vladislav just smiled at the scene that he saw. Ah, young love. I remember it well. Moscow, a jewel of the East. A true third Rome that even the great Constantine would be proud of, the city that was made to rival both Eternal City and the Queen of the Cities. Through the long history of Moscow, it was a site of many events that turned around the course of history. And even now, in the time of relative peace, it's still sending silent but powerful signals that it will again, if need be, show its power and defend its lands like how it always been. Though the show-off force that is currently underway is truly a mighty host, but it is a grain of sand in the sea of it. It was a time of the grand parade, a show of force and a reminder, as well as a promise to all, that if need be there will be hell to pay, and the day of reckoning would commence if they felt threatened. Though to anyone who even have a bit of magic in them, could almost immediately tell that even though the weapon and rows upon rows of equipment and men was the least of everyone's worries, since the true power of the Slavic faction was about to be shown, and Issei and his party could barely take even a whimp of breath, as the magic was so terrifying and so powerful that what they felt was nothing compared to this. And just as expected, they saw what made that powerful, overwhelming presence. Since after the regular army of Slavic nations marched forward, it was time for the true power to be shown, and as the heroes, war leaders and demigods made their presence known and the people of Moscow and other Slavic nations cheered, one individual could be seen flanked by a squadron of well-equipped bodyguards, all in grey uniforms as they all lined up behind the individual who had jet black hair, golden eyes and looked no more than 40 years old. He was also wearing a similar uniform like the troops behind him. But while the appearance could fool anyone, those who felt the man's power knew better than underestimate him, as it would be the last thing they knew, and the bodyguards also presented their power that was just below the man in front of them. But still enough for others to know that is better not to mess with them if you value your life. And as Issei learned a bit later, those troops were the legendary Iron Regiment of the 1st Call, 2nd Morava Division, who were all battle veterans of the First World War. And were given a new life after they died by God Vito as his palace guard, since he was so impressed by their bravery and intellect that he gave them a second life and had them train in magic so that they could be even more formidable. As the man and his bodyguard approach, the center part of the red square where a huge stand for guests and other high-ranking individuals and the Friends of Honor were seated. The man stopped and as one with his unit turned on their heels and bowed in front of a bit higher stand that from Issei could tell was the place where all the Slavic gods and a few from other mythologies were seated. As the bowed man awaited for something, Issei saw an older man, in his 50s, stood up before slowly started clapping his hands, which was followed with everyone else doing the same gesture, before it turned in a full-blown roar of approval from the crowd that was heard for miles. It took a few minutes for the cheers to quiet down, and in those minutes, no one, not even the gods, wanted it to be anything but cheers. They added in the cheering, as they all shouted the names of the units that were already shown, and wanted to present themselves again to the eager crowd. Which the soldiers did with smiles on their faces as the square began again to be filled with them. Issei and others could see a clear difference between the troops from the west, east and south, with great pride in front of the stands, with their war flags on full display. From the stands that housed the guests, an older man stood up who looked even older than Odin, dark hair with golden eyes and long white beard that was reaching the floor. As soon as he stood up, all the armies of the Slavic nations stood at attention, clearly and eagerly awaiting the response and the approval of the older man that clearly held a lot of power and was a person of huge importance and influence. My children, you made me very proud to be able to see this. You made what I thought was impossible, but you managed to do that. Every year, for the past few thousand years I've seen a lot of my children come and go, and every time a parade was organized I thought, the last time was perfect, and I don't know if they could make it even more splendid, but every time you, my children, managed to destroy that boundary and pushed the boundaries even higher and higher. For that, I thank you from the bottom of my heart, and as long as I live and have even an ounce of power in me, I will do everything in my power to keep and protect you. The older man said in a soft and fatherly tone as he watches the troops and even the gods having hard time keeping up their emotions, as they saw the older man have a few tears going down his face as he surveyed the troops that were beyond loyal to him and his sons, and he knew that every one of them would gladly die if it meant that those they love and cherish will survive. For that, I am proud beyond belief, and with honor and with pride I can with utmost certainty say that this year parade was executed with utmost perfection, and that the mission was a success. My children, the older man spoke with a voice full of pride and power, and as soon as he said those words the soldiers all lifted their banners even higher and from their mouths one word was kept repeating Ura. The cheer was so loud that a few had to wince, but they kept listening to the battle cry as it was repeated a few times before it died down, as the man beside the elder stood up. Brothers, proud sons of the Slavic lands, you all had done a huge honor of coming and participating in this year parade. As such I wish to call upon generals of the three. Please come forward, sons of the Slavs, and present yourself to the people here that came to see this masterpiece, the troops who all band together to make this art, and to us honored gods and guests that had the privilege to see your creation that was all-inspiring. The god that spoke in a calm and welcoming voice was a man in his 30s and had a golden tunic that looked like it was made from a creature of great importance and power as its fur was enough to make anyone cringe in fright. The man also had long white hair and blue, as ocean deep eyes. He was a huge man towering almost 2 meters in height. From the troops stood up 3 warriors, all of whom looked as old as the man that spoke. The 3 warriors, from what Issei presumed, were the elite of the elite, and if what the man said were generals, it could only mean that they were a part of the elite bodyguard units that Elsha spoke of in extremely honored tone, as she was the one that had a privilege to be trained by them and got to know that by heart. Even going as far as calling them like they were her family. The first one to step forward was a man clad in silver armor that had white wings on his back, and from what Issei heard from Lucy, those wings were from a wind dragon, and that alone spoke volume of the power that the man who stood in front had. The man also held a sword that looked like it was made from gold and in the shape of falcata, with a griffin head at the handguard. My lords, I, John III Sobieski, present myself to you. I'm a military leader of the South District of the Western Slavic land. General and leader of the elite wing hussars 1st Regiment, Dragon Slayers of Sky. I am extremely honored to receive your praises and gratitude from the people here today. It fills my heart with joy to hear them and you, my lieges, that you're enjoying the festivity. The man named John said as he bowed in front of the Slavic gods, who nodded their heads before the man took off his helmet and revealed his face that looked no more than in his 40s, with his white hair and silver eyes that looked like it could see in person's soul and find anything it wanted. The next one to step forward was a man clad in golden wool that, like the man before, told of his power, and the large battle axe that was strapped on his back radiated so much power that it made Issei and his group cringe as they felt the power from it. The man was as tall as his comrade, a good almost 2 meters, and his gold hair and black eyes made Issei shiver even more than the battle axe he had. As the warrior stood beside his comrade, he also bowed down before introducing himself to all present. My lord, gods and honored guests and the people of the Slavic nations. I, Alexander Nevsky, present myself to you all. I'm the military leader of the East Slav nations, general and leader of the elite Perrin's 1st Guard Regiment Golden Bears. I am grateful to have the chance to be here and organize this event with my fellow generals, and it was an even greater honor to be in the presence of these world-class troops and in front of this amazing crowd. Alexander said in a respectable voice as he stood up and made his way towards his colleague. The last one to make his way towards the stands was a man that was taller than both previous generals. He was a man that was easy over 2 meters in height and was clad in blood-red armor that made Issei, for a moment, think that it was his balance breaker armor. But as he looked closer, it was a bit different and a lot deadlier. The man stood beside his fellow generals, bowed a bit towards the two, who returned the gesture, before he turned towards the gods, and kneeled in front of them before taking his helmet, revealing his long brown hair and blood-red eyes that sent a shiver down Issei's body. People of the Slavs, dear troops of the Slavic faction, fellow generals, honored gods of the mighty Slavic lands. I, Milo Zabilik, the leader of the South Slavic elite First Order of the Red Dragon Swords of Veto, am honored to be here in front of you all today. And, I'm grateful that we've managed to exceed your expectations, old father of the Slavs. In the name of the troops from all parts of your kingdom, from young to old, I wish to say that we are thankful that you bestow the honors of taking part in this magnificent festival, and all we can say that we will make the next years even more exciting and magnificent than this. That is the promise we the generals of the three and warlords of your mighty armies promise to you, Milo said in a respected tone as he stood up before he and his brothers in arms turned towards the troops and shouted towards them. Long live, heroes, and the troops all like one answered them. Long live our Lord Triglav, long live the fatherland. But that shout, the great military parade was over. The day after the parade turned to be like any other to the gods, even though they were still discussing about the small details from it and how to improve it even more. In the great chamber at the Kremlin castle, the three gods and their generals were talking about some delicate subjects, all under the watchful eyes of their father Triglav, who was sitting on the throne that was for the god of the east, but under the pressure from his sons and their generals, he was forcefully put in the seat, even after claiming that this was not his place of power, which they said that it was an honorary thing to do to let the elder sit in the comfiest seat in the room. When the doors of the room opened, a guard from Nevsky's regiment entered the room. My lords, generals, old father. I came to inform you that Red Dragon Emperor and his escort are here and they request an audience with you all. The guard said in a calm and even tone. I see, well what do you think brothers? Should we stop this now and discuss it a bit later? I did receive word from Odin that the Red Dragon Emperor was coming. And from what Nevsky said, he was already at your place brother looking for you. Might as well see what he has to say. Perrin said as he looked at everyone in the room who nodded their heads seemingly trying to take a break from whatever they were talking about. Before Perrin turned towards his father, who looks at him in the eyes. Like I said time and time again. You three are the leaders now. I'm nothing more than a guest here my son, no matter which part of the lands I visit. So, it is your decision since this is your land. The old man said earning a chuckle from the others. Very well, Pavlov do tell the Red Dragon Emperor and his escort to enter. They have permission. Perrin said to the guard, who bowed before exiting the room, after which he ordered some vodka, rakia and a few natural drinks for his guests from the maids that served them, as he remembered that they well still all teens, so it would be unhealthy to give the strong stuff just yet. As the door of the chamber opened again, all present inside turned to see Pavlov entering the room, closely followed by a brown-haired boy and a few girls that looked beautiful, even to Slavic high standards of beauty. The closer they got towards them, the residents could feel dragon aura coming from the boy in large waves, though that just made things easier for them to know with who they would talk. The moment they were in front of the gods, the brown-haired boy's arm glowed bright red, before the booster gear appeared intriguing the gods and the generals even more. Though that was only for a moment before their eyes went wide when they heard a voice they were sure they would never hear again. Old father, uncle's Aisha's voice was heard as the gods and generals and the visiting group stood in shock as booster gear shined even brightly before Elsha stood in front of them with a huge smile on her face as she ran over to them and hugged the shell-shocked people who just stared at her like they saw some miracle. The Alesha Nevsky said with shock as he looked at the woman that now stood in front of them, a huge smile shone and a small tear going down her cheek. Yup Uncle Nevsky it's me. In the flesh, well partly in the flesh. Elsha said as slowly everyone returned to the reality of the situation before them. But how? We saw you die in that battle at the Fallen Gates when we fought those wretched Norskins. How are you here? Milo said in shock as he looked at her, before turning towards the young boy who was looking at Elsha with a confused look on his face, before he figured out why his niece was here and why the group came. Now I get it, booster gear saved your soul, that is why you are able to be here isn't it? Yes, though I think it's time to introduce yourself darling Issei. Elsha said cheerfully which made everyone raise their eyebrows at her way of talking. Seeing as this was the best time to do what he was told, Issei stepped forward before bowing in respect. My name is Issei Haidu, current Red Dragon Emperor. With me here present are Lucy Lucifuge, the sister of Grafia Lucifuge Gremory, and the heiress of the Lucifuge clan, Murayama and Caddis, the Kendo masters. Assi Lockhart, a swordswoman that was excommunicated from the Vatican Church because she learned a forbidden knowledge, Chelsea Dalton, an assassin that is now my ally, and Arnett Macmillan, a Valkyrie that came here with us as bodyguard, along with her comrade Asuna, who is now currently with Carito. Issei said as he introduced his escort while the girls bowed down in respect towards the gods and generals. Well John chuckled, a bit knowing full well about their relationship and why Asuna wasn't present. I see, well why don't you take a seat, I heard from Odin that you came to him first with two things, it will be interesting to hear them from your mouth young man. I'm God Perrin, the leader of the East. I'm sure you already saw my bodyguard Alexander Nevsky in the parade. Perrin said as he took the seat beside his throne, which was still occupied by his father. Well since we are introducing, I'm God Vels, ruler of the West, and I heard that you've been to my part of the land, I'm sorry that I couldn't welcome you there, but this will have to do. And I'm sure you already know who this fine fellow behind me is. Vels said in a friendly tone as he pointed towards John, who nodded his head towards them. Though this was the first time Issei saw Vels, and he could already tell that the man in front of him was unlike his other fellow gods, a bit leaner, and looked like he was more of a caster type than a warrior, unlike his fellow brothers. Though he didn't doubt that should need be, the man who was slowly taking his seat would let all hell loose and leave a bloody mess with ease. Bells was also a man that if you look at him, would pass as a pretty normal person, if not for his icily blue eyes that gave him away. That was how terrified they look, but other than those two features that stood up the most, the god in front of them could easily pass as a student by any means, and no one would question it. My name is God Vito, the ruler of the South. It's a pleasure to meet you all, and this man in armor is my captain of my guard Milo Zapilik. Vito said in a cheerful voice while having a smile on his face that was sending chills down the group's side even more. Though the only one not affected was Elsha, who was laughing at fright indicated Issei and his group. Though before Issei and his group could feel even more scared, the oldest of the present decided it was only fair that the young know about him and to direct their thoughts out of the gutter. So, with a cough, he introduced himself. Triglav asked in a fatherly tone, while Elsha looked like a small child that was scolded for doing something that was forbidden. While the sight was amusing to all, except Elsha, she couldn't say anything or looked in Triglav's eyes, looked at her accusingly and with calm waited for her answer. Seeing that Lucy decided to help the Red Dragon Empress before she could embarrass herself even more. "God Triglav if I may?" Lucy asked, which made Triglav look at her before giving her the go-ahead. As his attention turned toward the young heiress, which gave Elsha a chance to breathe. Issei met Elsha in his sacred gear after his fight with a member of the Phoenix clan. From there we discovered that her soul was split in two. One part was in the gear while the other was in the weapon that was tailor-made for her. That is also one of the reasons why we come here. Lucy said in a regal tone while showing respect towards the gods and the warriors in the room. After hearing the explanation, Triglav looked at his young son for a second before nodding his head towards him. And Vito didn't need to be told what his father wanted, and with a quick look toward Milos, who just activated his magic and teleported away, before he returned a few moments later with a box that was full of Slavic magic protection. Before we see if what you say is true, we would need to see if you are worthy of getting this weapon. Even with Elsha here, we can't just give you this without knowing you're worth Red Dragon Emperor. Vito said seriously, all his playful expression and cheerful voice disappearing and turning into a deadly serious one, his eyes showing power and knowledge of a seasoned warrior who waged war for centuries. Even though we are in my land and Elsha was my captain of the guard. On this subject, I don't have any power or authority. The weapon was made in Vito's realm, and it was his blacksmiths and mages that made it, so it is he who can decide if you are worthy of it. Perrin said in advance, as he knew that even if he wanted to help Elsha and others, there were a few things that even his father, Vels, or even him couldn't do, and that was to put their noses in things that weren't theirs. Though before that, I suggest you tell us all what is the second reason for your visit. Please relax and have a drink and some food. It is only natural that some things would be done while having a feast and a few drinks to let the nerves relax. Don't you agree to Brother Vito? Perrin said as he looked at his brother, who nodded his head and took a glass of rakia and downed it in one go. You're right, brother. The task for the weapon would be discussed later. Now we have a celebration of successful Pererat to have. Vito said with a smile as he told Elsha to sit down with him and to take the few drinks. Chapter 34. Last Hour of Peace. It was a place that was so unforgiving, cold, dark, full of malice magic that was foul to the core, yet even in a place that was damned forever, an old archenemy of the world was rising again. It was 200 years since the last incursion, but even now, that defeat of the armies of the damned was a bitter pillow to swallow. Even more so when they clearly had everything going for them. The main factions were at war, Greek, Norse, Slavic, Hindu and a few other powerful religions were having their work full, with the damned armies, strike, and the champions and war leader of the armies were battling against a god, while their troops faced off against other though, even still it was for nothing, as the final moments of the catastrophe were about to occur. All but the commanders of the units were present, though it was not an issue of their non-appearance that was telling him that what he was trying to do was going to end up as a disaster. No, it was that all of them being commanded by the mixed-blooded blonde that was in her pristine armor of blood-red dragon scales, that was the main problem. For he knew who he was facing, a princess in all but name, a warrior that even if he wanted to scoff at, couldn't, since he knew about the true power that the woman had, and that power alone was making him, even for a moment, uneasy. Though, he crushed that thought almost as soon as it appeared, for he would not waver in an opportunity to test the steel of his sword against the steel of the finest weapon made by both factions, as it would be like an insult to his pride as a warrior and the leader of the mighty host. And in the middle of that gruesome battle, two warriors of equal power traded blow for blow, neither willing to submit, too stubborn to die and to give up. Even when both lost their weapons, they fought with fists, magic, borrowed weapons from the fallen, the battle was too fierce to let up. Though in the end, it wasn't him who had given the final blow to the warrior that was battling, but an assassin from the foul race called the Skaven. Foul creatures that he would honestly wish to destroy, but couldn't, as they are also the children of the foul gods, and because of that, he had to tolerate their existence for now at least. Though it was the fall of the warrior that he fought that almost made the allied army crumble, if it wasn't for an appearance of the three mighty warriors that rallied them back and spearheaded that fresh assault, and if it wasn't for the reinforcements that arrived from the other battles, he would probably fight all three of them if given the chance. But sadly, he knew it would only lead to his death, and that was not something that he wished at the time. Though as he departed from the field, he was in pure joy as he saw all three of the mighty warriors and other troops, seeing a body in crimson armor unmoving, even with the help of the healers from the arriving armies and the magic supplied by others, they couldn't help. They simply arrived too late. He was sure that his generals did a number on the others, and he felt even greater joy even. But that was 200 years ago, and he was sure that the factions were now a bit more prepared than before, but he also knew that if he gives a bit more time, their focus would be somewhere else, and their defenses would be weak to withstand the assault. But he would first need to test the resolve, and to probe his enemy, he didn't want to have a rehearsal of what had happened, and because of that, he called for a meeting with his high-level officers and generals. And in no time, all of them answered the call, be it out of fear or out of the respect he didn't know or that he cared was for utter destruction, and he was damn sure he would accomplish his mission on his name as Archie the Averchison, the champion of the true gods, the gods of chaos. As the gathering was completed, it was now time for him to speak, and his voice was that of destruction manifested, a deathly calm and clear tone, a voice full of power that it commanded authority, and if any refused to acknowledge they would be dealt accordingly. The Kame, you did say that the new Red Dragon Emperor battled against Kakabiel and managed a draw, right? And that traitor is with him, correct? Archien's cold voice was heard, making a Kame nod her head. As some of the older generals of the original invasion raised their eyebrows at the interesting news. Yes, my lord, and from the intelligence we gathered, they are in pursuit of reviving Elsha the Red Empress and calling audience for a meeting that the three factions want to propose peace and alliance. A Kame said quickly, for she dared not speak slow in fear of her life. Elsha, you say? I didn't hear of that name since that damn Skaven killed her in that battle. No matter, where are they now? Archien asked as his eyes shone with bloodlust. Moscow, my lord, they are currently in the Eastern Slavic realm. Very well, go there and bring whoever you think would be needed. I want both of them dead for sure, and do cause death and destruction as much as possible. We need to see how fast they can react. You can have the North Legion to support you in this vendor. If you see it fit, call reinforcements, East Legion will be in waiting. Archien said as he dismissed a Kame before going on to other topics. The time of peace was over, and a new wave of war was just about to begin. And it made Archien's blood boil in anticipation. What better way to start a war than to have a big battle? And who better to start is then against those who stopped him the last time. Back to the lands of Slav, in Kremlin Castle, the atmosphere was a lot more relaxed now than what it was at the start. With Elsha and Vito talking about some random subjects, Perrin decided that it would be wise to see what Issei and his crew were about to say. Startled a bit about the question, since he didn't pay that much attention to Perrin, Issei coughed in his hand a few times before speaking. Ah yes, well, Lord Serziches wanted me to inform you and the Norse that they would be very much honored if you would be present at the peace conference and the alliance that the three factions of Bible want to propose. They finally decided to put aside their differences. Issei said as he looked at Perrin, who just scratched his beard in thought. So, they finally put their heads out of their asses. Vito said as he stopped his conversation with Elsha to listen to the proposal. Yes, in a manner of speaking. Issei said calmly. Well, that is good, though we need to discuss that issue after this. After all, I would need to speak with Auden about it. Perrin said, as he was about to leave the room, though Ornette spoke that Auden already agreed on attending and provided a letter that held Auden's approval of the meeting and his presence there. Well, if that old man is going. Who of us Vels is going? Vito isn't going, that is for damn sure. Perrin said while having a smirk on his face, as Vito growled at him while Vels just chuckled knowing why Perrin said that. Well, I was thinking that maybe I should go. It would be a good opportunity to talk to Azazel and see how Michael is doing. I didn't see those two since they were little. Vels said as Perrin nodded his head. Remembering how those two little were a handful, but always a welcome addition to his father's court, and they were some of the Vito's best friends before the Great War. Fair enough, but you will be going with both Vitos and my guard as a way to show that all of us agree on this. Perrin said as he gave his father a bottle of rakia that Vito brought for celebration. And was thinking of telling his younger brother to order a few crates for his court also. He didn't know how Vito had this damn drink that was easy to drink but pack a punch of a sledgehammer. He was sure that an order for a few crates was in for him and his warriors to have a nice pick-me-up, a drink that will calm their nerves when they are all tense or in bad mood. I'm in agreement with that. But let's not send our elite, it would be too much for some of the newer in charge to handle, and they would feel threatened by us sending our most powerful. Vito said as he turned others out and continued to talk to Elsha. Hearing the words from his youngest son, Triglav let a good heated laugh which made Vito go stiff for a moment. I didn't know you had it in you, might make something that smart, except if it was on battlefield. Triglav said in mock surprise, as Perrin and Vels laugh at their brother who was slowly starting to get pissed at them for insulting him. Really? Well, since I'm battle smart, how about I show you what I can do to the three of you? Vito said as he brought a long sword that was slightly curved at the tip with the head of the dragon at the hilt, while being all dual color having blue and red as primary colors. Seeing the weapon form in Vito's arm, all three of the gods stiffen as they knew that they might get a beating of the lifetime for insulting the god of war. Though before Vito could stood up and start hacking at his brothers and father, Elsha slapped him over the head while having a sweet smile on her face, an aura of doom that made Vito pale for a bit. Uncle, what did I tell you about fighting Uncles Vels and Perrin? Not to mention Father Triglav. Elsha said in a sickly sweet tone as magic protections over the box that held her weapon started to slowly break, making Vito even more scared. Haha wiped haha sorry Elsha. Vel said laughing at his brother's treatment, though that was short-lived as Elsha turned towards the middle brother with the same smile and aura. Now, child, it's all in good nature for a little banter and a bit of brotherly fight. It was a long time since these idiots had a chance to vent and be a bit destructive. Triglav told her as he looked at Elsha with a smile as he couldn't help but feel alive again as he saw his brats acting like they used to after so long time ago. Fine, old father, but if they in their fun hurt Issei and the girls, I will show them the definition of my way of having fun. Elsha said with an utmost calm and perfectly level tone that made all three gods gulp and turn a bit pale as they knew one important thing, and that was hell has no fury like a woman scorned. And soon Nevsky and Perrin were involved as Milo sent Vito at Perrin, who in turn hit Nevsky, and both of them sent Vito back at Milo's before a free-for-all started, all the while Triglav just put a barrier around Issei and the girls for their safety. Brothers, please be civil, Vel spoke as he tried to stop them but got two prone fists in his face by his brothers. Which made him crash to the other side of the chamber. As the brawl continued, Triglav was laughing in an amused manner as it was something that no matter how old his brats got or how much they tried, some habits just couldn't die out and he would rather have it this way than another. No fair, I want to get in a brawl, I haven't a good fight in ages, Elsha shouted in a manner that was like a child that didn't get her favorite toy, and boy it was funny. Though that is until Issei and the girls realized that she intended to fight with the gods, that they slowly started to pale at the thought that someone could go fighting in a brawl, that only pure physical strength was the only law in the fight. Don't worry my daughter. If all goes well and Red Dragon Emperor manages to pass the exam of Vito, then you can let loose as much as you like and those 6 bozos will be the ones to clean up the mess later. Triglav said in amusement as he tilted his head to the side as a chair sailed past his head and continued to watch as if nothing had happened. Fine, I will hold it together for a bit longer. Elsha said with a pout on her face. I'm glad to hear that, my dear, but Triglav was stopped as an alarm started to blast a siren that made all of the fighters stop in their tracks as they looked confused for a few moments before they saw the doors of the chamber opening in almost destructive fashion as the guard Pavlov entered the room. My lords, we have an invasion. The army of the chaos is near Irkutsk, and from the looks of things, they are heading to one of the pillars. What are your orders, my lords? Pavlov told them in the quickest and the calmest way possible, though still, it was a bit of a shock to hear the chaos was stirring up again. But what made them all jump was when they heard a shout of rage. What? Elsha shouted in rage as she remembered what it like to fight them and how she died. The Elsha? Pavlov was taken aback as he saw her once again, but he was quick to understand that it was better not to question that now. As I said, we are under attack, and I fear that if Irkutsk falls that we may start dealing with a whole new incursion. Pavlov told her, which made her blood boil as she quickly turned toward Slavic gods, who even, with how they acted a few moments ago, knew that this was way more serious than their stupid brawl. Milos, send a word to Lazar and Dusan. I want 2 regiments of heavy cav to be south of the city in 2 minutes' time. Vito sharply ordered, as Milos left without a word to inform his brothers of a call to battle and what they will deal with. Similarly to how Vito acted, both Perrin and Vels issued orders to their generals who did as told. Though now that they were calling to arms their armies, they gathered a projection of the army approaching slowly, as if they knew that they are going to win, as they saw no opposition to their advance. And what they saw made some blood boil. In front of the army, 6 individuals were going as if it was the destruction only moments away. Though Issei and others, only one was known, a Kame Honda, but from one other, Issei felt an urge from Drake to kill the individual that was more like a mountain than a beast or a man. It was a dragon ogre, and from what Drake said in his mind, the second strongest and oldest. One that did an act so cruel and so unforgiving that in any faction, religion or race its punishment was death. And what that dragon ogre did was eat Drake's hatchlings alive, while all the way mocking Drake, who was at that moment fighting one of the foul ones. The name of the dragon ogre was Kolek's Dragon Eater. Pain, that was the first thing that Issei felt as he saw the army of chaos and the leaders that were in front of it. Though that pain only increased to the extreme, as Issei's eyes landed on a beast that was 5x taller than his house at least, and that beast was more like a minotaur than anything but only 100x more powerful and having electricity flowing through it and around. In its hand was a gigantic warhammer that was like him, brimming with electrical energy, and his eyes were also glowing with power. He could feel and knew that something had to happen in the past for Drake to react this much and to release this much anger, rage with killing intent. But even if he wished to ask, he was assaulted with enormous amount of pain in his arm that holds the gear, and it was at that point that he had to yell as it was becoming unbearable. Though his shout of pain was a good return to reality that was needed for others in the room as their heads snapped at Issei's form, holding his hand and trying, but failing to suppress the pain. Seeing what the cause was and knowing a few things about the dragon that her soul sad kept, Elsha rushed to Issei's side and started to use a calming spell on the dragon that was close to snapping. Brag, you need to calm down, you are hurting your host, and we might need him and you in the battle. Elsha quickly said while pumping a bit more magic on her spell. That beast did the most unforgettable thing, and for that, it must die, and I will be damned for eternity if I let that foul creature escape again. Drake roared in rage as somewhat calmed down, though his roar was enough to shake even the gods that knew way better than to enrage or antagonize a raging dragon. And even more so a heavenly dragon. What did he do, Drake? Issei asked weakly, only to scream in pain as Drake's fury entered a new stage. Issei, that dragon ogre ate both of Drake's hatchlings alive while Drake was battling against the first dragon ogre, the strongest of them all, Krakenrock the Black and the father of the race. It was said that he was as large as the mountains and his power was on par with a heavenly dragon. Elsha said as she was trying her hardest to calm Drake down before Issei could end up in a very bad situation. Seeing the situation and the danger that was looming over their heads, Triglav decided to help and calm the situation down. Drake, Emperor of the Red Dragons, I have a proposition for you if you wish to listen to this old man. Triglav's voice was calm, but he knew that if Drake agreed to listen, he would need to speak quickly. Speak, an old friend of Red Dragons, but know that your words may mean your death. Drake warned as he was in a very bad mood as rage and fury were clear in his tone. Normally if someone threatened their father, the Slavic gods would have unleashed hell on that person, but seeing as that Drake was agreeing to listen was a bit of a remedied sigh, but still, they knew firsthand that when dragon declares something it is bound to happen, so they could only hope it would end well, or they might be in a war with beings that are not easy to negotiate. I understand that, my old friend, and as you know me, I would never do anything that will endanger my subjects, friends or family. That being said, I can help you in your chances of killing that fiend and even having a chance to have a body of yours and even Elsha's back and your souls returned, should you only wish for. Triglav spoke in the most serious and evenly tone that clearly meant that he was capable of what he said. Which shocked everyone, even the Red Dragon, to the core. Lord Perrin, the army of Central District is on a move and will arrive in half an hour at the battle site. Also 5 and 6 regiments of your guard are mobilized and are awaiting the transportation to the location. Nevsky spoke as this was a bit more urgent and needed to be dealt with quickly. I see, tell the commanders that they got a green light and to get the army in battle position and to await further orders. Perrin told Nevsky as he did as he was told and quickly departed. Well, might as well aid you, brother. 2 regiments of Blood Dragon were ordered to be battle ready and to await further orders. Now that I think of it, I will send 2 more divisions of hussars as the vanguard and to hit and run. Though should it be required, I will send more forces towards the battle, even Iron Guard and Dragonborn Knights, if the situation is dire. Vito added as he saw Perrin's eyes have a bit of light in them as he heard that good news and hearing that should thing go bad, that he will have the help of 2 of the most powerful units in South Arsenal was indeed a huge relief. 2 units of wing hussars are also waiting to add you, brother. We will need an air superiority if we want to win this battle, so you can count on me to keep the sky clear. And if it isn't enough, I will send the more reinforcements, even the Sky Dragons and Wing Lancers will be in the if need be. Bells got a word that made Perrin have a smile on his face as it was a long time since they all fought together. I'm very grateful for your assistance, brothers. You have my gratitude. Perrin told his brothers who nodded their heads. That being said, I want to be a part of this battle and I'm sure that my partner would do good in helping you all and doing that test can be seen in this battle. But for my body and giving me another chance at life and to be able to soar through the sky once again, I would have to decline that offer, old friend. My time has passed, now I'm more enjoying seeing what the future holds and my partner is a very interesting person and I would hate to miss his growth. Drake said in a clear and serious tone that left no room for an argument. While the answer shocked everyone, only Triglav understood the deeper meaning to Drake's words, as it wouldn't be a life without his rival or his family, it would be only everlasting sadness that would consume the mighty dragon. You are as wise as you are powerful, Drake, and I will respect your wishes, though know this, if you ever want to change that, all you need to do is ask. I'm still in a very large debt to you, my old comrade. And so you know, your body is in a safeguard of my personal units. We found your body after that war and transported it there, even healed it, so now it's in perfect condition. Though I must confess that we did take a few of your fallen scales to make Elsha's weapon, and we even have a few more, though if you wish for us to dispose of them, we will. Triglav softly spoke as he nodded his head in understanding. You have my gratitude, Triglav, father of the Slavs. I would be a fool to tell you that. You know firsthand how powerful the scales of the dragon are, so keep it, but do inform me or my host if you plan to make them into something else. Drake told Triglav in much less enraged voice, now that he was calmed a bit by Elsha's magic, to which Triglav nodded his head in agreement. As Drake said, I want to help and doing this could count as a test, or if you are not convinced after the battle you can always test me more, Lord Vito. And my group will help since I know how stubborn they are, so there isn't anything you could say or do to change their minds, I know that firsthand. Issei said as he looked at all the gods and Elsha, who nodded her head in approval before he winced as he remembered what Caddis and Murayama did to him when he lied, and know that Caddis had a dragon slayer sword along with Murayama having a sword of nightmares. He didn't want to find out what will do, and that was going to double for Lucy. Now that he thought about it, in his company was also a swordswoman who was as fast as lightning and an assassin, so yeah, he was screwed anyway he looked at it. Though before anyone could say anything about the proposition, Triglav looked at Milos and pointed to the box that held Elsha's weapon. The simple gesture was easily understood as hero of Serbian Empire did as he was silently ordered to do, and as soon as the box was close to Triglav, it shined for a few seconds before it releases a weapon that was one of the legendary and one of the most powerful one. The sheer power of the weapon was enough to make even the generals breathe just a tiny bit harder, as the red glow was emitted, basking everyone in its glow, as the booster gear shined in response to the weapon, as a bit of power was sent through Issei, as he felt the power he already possessed grow even further and further, and it was like it was just waiting to be unleashed. The weapon in question was a beautiful masterpiece. The blade shines like a polished red ruby, but the shape resembles of a jagged dragon's claw, sharp and deadly, that it could cut a human hair in one go with no struggle. It's as if the sword was part of the dragon itself, strong as its scales and powerful as its attack. The red and black complemented the blade perfectly, as it made it look like a real claw that was poised to strike at any moment. And the magic emitted from it was so dense, so potent, it was making everyone in the room fell on edge. Even Vito, the god of war, couldn't help but look at the sword with mixed emotions. Father, what is the meaning of this? Vito asked as he saw his father unleashing the weapon, even though he knew what his father was doing. It's simple, son, we are at war, and with Red Dragon Emperor offering his strength in the upcoming battle, it would be a good way to test his strength, courage, intelligence and resolve. And we both know that that is one of the prime things that make a good warrior, and as a god of war, you know those traits are important too, do you not, my son? Triglav explained as he looked at his son while the weapon floated toward him. Seeing his father's point of view and knowing that himself very well, he sighed in exhaustion before looking at Milo's and telepathy telling him what he wanted before telling his brothers the same thing, which they nodded in agreement. Fine, you win, father. Elsha and Red Dragon Emperor stay here for a few moments while you Arnett go with the rest and be ready for battle if you want to help. Milos will send you there. Also, a squad of Valkyries are also sent there for upcoming battle. As Auden saw this coming, you were given charge of the Marnet. Think of this as your promotion test. Should you accomplish this, I will personally see to it that you become a royal guard. Vito told before addressing Arnett, who went wide eyes before she nodded, and a creepy battle lust grin appeared on her beautiful face. Them seriously, as he looked like his brother who just grinned in agreement. Seeing that they would not be told why Issei and Elsha were to stay behind, the group was teleported to the city to await an army to come and prepare for battle. But the girl's gone. Vito nodded to his brother as Vel snapped his fingers and Elsha's mortal body and its armor appeared on the table that was clean of food and drinks beforehand. Seeing her body, Elsha grunted in discomfort as she still saw the place that an assassin hit her and took her life. Though while she discomforted, Issei was in limbo as he didn't know how to react to this, though he saw that the body was in perfect condition, with not a single sign of her long ago passing, and even looking like she was asleep. Red Emperor, take this sword and place it in her hand while your hand with gear has to be placed over her heart. Vels told Issei as he was grinning at the thought of Elsha getting a second chance and living a happy life once more. Though hearing this made Issei red as a tomato as he basically had to grope her in front of others, but he suppresses his blush and embarrassment as he did what he was told. As he placed the sacred blade in Elsha's mortal body hands, he felt a connection slowly starting to get stronger and stronger as the more time passed, but as the connection grew, so did Elsha's spiritual form slowly started to fade away, returning into the booster gear. Now with that done, Drake, could you possibly transfer Elsha's soul to her old body? Vels questioned as he looked at Issei, or more accurately at Issei's hand that housed the gear. It wouldn't be a problem to do so, though the process will be extremely painful and will require a lot of energy that my host currently doesn't have. Drake answered as the atmosphere in the room started to feel tense. How about if we give some of our energy to Issei, or we supply the following transfer? With your help and the sword, it will be enough to give her a second chance. Perrin asked as he was trying to find a way to make this happen. That could actually work, but know this, Elsha was deadly wounded, so at the most, she will have about 5 years to live. Drake told them. It's enough of a time for us to figure out a way to prevent her from dying again. But no, we have more important things to do. We have a battle to go to and a one-bucking dragon ogre that needs to be left in pieces. So, partner, let's return the Empress to the world of mortal again. And take bloody revenge on that ugly overgrown piece of shit. Issei said with a determinant in his voice as he started to gather energy from his body. Ha 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 ha, well said, partner, well said. You are sounding more and more like a true dragon. Perrin, Vito, Vels, Triglav, when I start the procedure you pump as much power as you can into Issei and we will do the rest. Drake told them as the gods nodded their heads in understanding while they placed their hands on Issei's shoulder before starting to slowly transfer power towards Issei. I'm ready, Drake, let's do it. Transferred, Drake roared as he started the procedure. In the peaceful city of Irkutsk, it was business as usual. People were doing their own stuff, hanging out, drinking, enjoying nature, going to work. Like they did every day, though today it was different. As soon as the magic barrier that was around 200 kilometers in radius breached, the whole town was blasted with sirens for emergency, and all the people of the city evacuated as quickly as possible. Women and children were sent towards other towns to inform and prepare them for the incoming enemy, while the men stayed. After all, it was known why the sirens were activated. This was a place that held great importance to the world, and the people of Irkutsk were well informed of the supernatural and the chaos. And even if the city tried to defend itself and not call for backup, it would not last long. The people knew that very well. They were after all well informed about what happened last time, and they didn't waste any time and called for the army. They could only hope that the armies of Lord Perrin could arrive in time to defend them. If not, well, they would be sure to dent even a bit of the host that was slowly marching towards their city. But that though, people of Irkutsk put themselves to work, fortifying the city as best as they could, with the help of World War II veterans who knew how to direct and where to build the barricades and trenches to delay or to make choke points for the people and their limited forces to fight off the invaders. But they would be damned if they don't put even a bit of fight, take a few of the bastards with them. It was a horn of war. Lord Perrin's army was on a warpath, and the sound of its mighty horn was enough to steel the hearts of the people, to calm their nerves, and to let the adrenaline of battle that they all had in them slowly start to creep in their hearts. The battle instinct that was in their DNK was starting to overwhelm them. The need to utterly destroy and crush the invaders was all times high. The sound of the Perrin's army was approaching filled them with happiness, and now as they could clearly see them only a few kilometers away, they knew that the battle was about to begin. Though as the army reached the city and was welcomed in the most grandiose way, they heard 2 more battle horns announcing the arrival of the troops. And the people of the city, like the army that just arrived, couldn't believe what they were seeing. 2 more teleporting circulars with the crests of the West and South Slav symbols appeared, and from looking in them, they first saw 2 Royal Hippogriff Knights regiments of wing hussars flying in the air above them, making a few circulars in the air before forming a few wedge formations while in full battle readiness, as if they were waiting for a signal to let all heaven loose and destroy the enemy with their weapons and beasts. From the other circular, 4 regiments appeared, 2 in lightly armor and armed with spears and blades that looked like they were eager to start, as the bloodlust was oozing from them. They were famed hussars, the Serbian light cavalry that was known for their hit-and-run tactics and even for daring and bold changes that would change the course of the battle. Those hussars were the bane of the enemy and the hope of the allies. Though the last 2 units to arrive were what made even the wing hussars descend down and to show the respect that was worthy of the elites and the heroes of the old. The last 2 units to appear were none other than the Royal Blood Dragon Knights, all of them in pristine red armor with their weapons filled with magic power, their beast of war, ready to devour anything that tried to hurt its charge and make it a massacre of the enemy that was foolish enough to cross their path. Those blood dragons were the veterans of thousands of battles and were the ones that were there in the final battle against the same opponent now. Last time they failed in their duty to protect the Empress of the Red Dragon, and since then they train and train, so when the next incursion happened, they would be ready to get their revenge. For their oath of protecting the Empress was tarnished and was reckoning to be right this time with the blood of the hated enemy. Though they emitted those feelings and power that was clear to everyone, they managed to control themselves. They were after all the knights, and they would dare not ruin their names or their honor. Even more so since the 2 leaders of the units were Emperor of Serbia, Dusan the Mighty, and Duke Lazar, the holy warrior of orthodoxy, the last emperor of Serbia, the man that even with fewer men, managed to defend his country and save Europe for next 50-60 years. The battle formation was one that was as simple as possible. Infantry was in the center and was tasked to engage with the enemy's infantry, while hussars of the south were to go wide and to look for a weak spot that could be exploited while going for enemy artillery and some isolated units. Wing hussars were tasked with engaging the enemy air force and making air superiority, while blood dragons were there to neutralize the enemy mobility and to secure the flanks, while looking for a way to smash into the enemy's flank or rear to rout and destroy the army. Blood dragons were there to be like tanks of the army, with high armor, high charge and damage. Though while the Slavic forces were ready to meet the enemy, Valkyries and Lucy and the girls were to be held in reserve and to only engage and used should the enemy have a chance to break the formation. The question of the enemy generals and heroes was up to the leaders of the units to deal with. The Slavic war leaders weren't too concerned with the girls showing up on the battlefield. They knew from experience that women could fight as well as men, and if they were sent by their god, who were they to deny them the place in the army? But 6 heroes of the Slavic faction present on the battlefield, it would be an even fight. Even though they knew that the enemy had also a lot of elites in their ranks, the Slavic armies would not fail in their task. Besides, they had also 2 Perrin's Guard units as a core unit for infantry, and they will use them well when the battle was in the most critical moment and victory hangs in the air. That was the whole point of having those elite units. Elite was to fight elite, and with Perrin guards going to in berserk mode and their battle axes shining with power, while their blood pumping all-time high, it was a bit hard not to let them charge first and decimate the enemy. Wing hussars destroying the enemy air force and blood dragons going full charge against anyone foolish enough to meet their charge. The battle would be a bloody massacre. But the army now presented in front of the city, they clearly saw their opponents also taking a battle position. It was the same formation as the Slavics. There was not too much cunning involved in the battle plans of both forces, only to charge and hit hard. It was always said that the simplest of plans work wonders, and this was not the exception. The 2 armies already fought many times, and they knew what to expect. But as the army was awaiting an order to meet the enemy head-on, a sudden roar was heard echoing the valley. It was a powerful one that was full of power and authority, and one that demands respect. As the roar passed in front of the Slavic army, another magic circular appeared, this time instead of the Slavic faction, and unknown to most expect the leaders of the regiments of elites. At first, seeing the emblem on the circular was met with a shock and disbelief as they knew it very well, but as the magic floated even more and grew stronger, it was filling the leaders with a sense of purpose, pride, and happiness. Especially the blood dragon regiments that couldn't believe the sight. From the circular, they saw two individuals emerging, both clad in red armor that was pristine and elegant, but deadly in its own right, as it was sending a powerful flow of dragon aura that was almost too much to handle. While they were on the back of the ancient dragon Azdaja, that was said to be as powerful as the heavenly dragons. As the dragon let out another roar of power and challenge towards the enemy, the duo that was clad in armor jumped down and landed in front of the army, and from what the soldiers and heroes could see, was that one of the two had a distinct female version, while the other looked male. As soon as they are done transporting, both armored figures stopped releasing their magic. And as the army was in alert since they didn't know if they were friends or foe, they immediately surrounded them and pointed their weapons and magic at them. "Put your weapons down, release your spells, they are not the enemy," Duke Laser said as he approached the figures, well followed by his soldiers who were trying their best not to have their spirits too high up. As Laser was in front of the duo, he looked at both of them with searching eyes, feeling the distinct aura of the dragon of domination from both, which confused him a bit. "Who are you? What are you doing here?" Laser asked, skipping to the point. "Oh, Uncle Laser, you don't recognize me? I'm hurt." The voice from the female armored figure resonated through the army, who felt like they just heard the ghost. "What did you just say?" Laser hissed at her, as there were few things that were not to be messed with, especially about a small girl who he looked at like one of his own daughter. "I'm serious. Do you not remember my voice? If so, will this help you?" The armored woman said as she released her helmet, all the while bringing her weapon in front of her, while she put a bit of magic in it, which the weapon reacted immediately, releasing a huge aura. But that isn't possible." Laser's words fell as he saw her. There in front of him was Elsha, and in her hands was her own weapon that was only reacted to her will and power, an extension of her soul. "I thought that you were dead. I saw you die. How in God's names are you here?" Laser shouted as he brought his own sword that had a golden blade, while having a red hilt with a double-headed eagle on the guard. "You don't recognize me or my sword?" Elsha said as she pointed her blade at Laser, who looked ready to attack. Upon seeing the sword up close, Laser felt like he saw a ghost, and like Lord Vito was playing tricks on him, so he told a soldier to hit him to see if he was awake, or was this all illusion, though instead of a soldier he was hit with a red gauntlet over the head from Elsha, who was slowly starting to get angry. "Damn Elsha, don't hit so hard, you are real." Laser started to complain until he realized what he said, and who hit him hard. "Finally, you lost a few of your marbles since we last see each other, huh, uncle? And here I thought that Grandpa Putnik and Kachazov were a bit forgetful." Elsha grinned as she hugged Laser, who returned it gratefully. "How are you alive?" Laser asked as he couldn't help himself. "With Issei's help, he is the new host of Drag, and with his help along with gods and dregs I was brought back to life, though I only have 5 years before my soul would be destroyed if I don't find a new source to keep my soul in place and my body from destroying itself." Elsha explained as she gestured for Issei to come over. "Hello, I'm Issei Haidu, the current Red Dragon Emperor," Issei said as he extended his hand towards Laser, who grinned as shook it. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Issei, and I'm grateful for your help in bringing back the spoiled princess. The name is Laser," Laser said with a cheeky grin, which got him another punch to the head from blushing Elsha, but it was damn worth it as he let a laugh that was followed by the army, who could at least relax even for a bit and let the tension slowly back away before the battle. Even though the reaction of the army was a huge embarrassment to Elsha, she was still happy to see that the spirit and morale of the troops were in high regard, and that was one of the key elements of winning the battle that was no doubt going to be heavy. "Oh Laser, do you know where Lucy, Arnett and other girls are? They were sent to help fight in the battle as Elsha and I," Issei questioned, but instead of Laser answering, Issei felt an urge to dodge as the hairs on the back of his head started to rise, as from a deadly aura that was heading his way. Cadis's sword was sent flying towards his head as she charges, and bears hug him. "You bucking idiot, do you know how worried we were when we left you?" Cadis berated him. And Issei could help but chuckle at her antics. "Well, I do want to hit you repeatedly. I'm glad you are alright, and Elsha, you are back to the mortal plane, I see," Lucy said with a soft smile. Murayama and Chelsea hugged Issei, who returned the gesture. "Yup, I'm back, but now we have a battle to fight. Who is the commander of the army?" Elsha said as she looked at the heroes present. "The current commander of the army of the Slavic nation is you, Elsha. Since you are back, it's only right to give you the command of it. After all, you are the one that has led our armies through so many battles and never lost one. Also, you are the current highest ranking officer here, and that armor and sword you have is enough of a prof for us all," Dusan said as he turned towards the assembled forces. "You, Blood Knights of Lord Vito, Guardsmen of Lord Perrin and Wing Knights of Lord Vels, Valkyries of Lord Odin, heroes of old and warriors of our fatherland and of our old father Triglav, do you accept the command of Elsha, the Red Dragon Empress, the supreme general of Slavic faction? The victor of 1,000 battles, the war hero of Fallen Gates?" Dusan questioned in a strong and powerful voice that was heard easily by everyone present. And the answer was almost instant. The huge roar of approval was the indication that was needed by the heroes present to bow down towards Elsha, as everyone else followed the suit. Seeing the sight of the army that was full of powerful warriors and that held honor to the highest regard with their duty, Elsha couldn't help but let a tear go down her cheek as she smiled. Then as your commander, I order you this. To battle positions, this is a day where the blood of the damned will be spilled and a day where some of us who fall will feast in Valhalla and prav in the name of our lords and old father. We will not fall here, the city of Irkutsk will not fall today, for we will destroy our enemy as we did all those years ago to victory, Elsha roared as she released her power for the first time in 200 years and was delighted to find that power increased, even if she was only in the gear, which she had no doubt that Drag, Issei and Slavic gods had something to do about it. The roar of approval was all that Elsha needed to start forming a new plan of battle and to rearrange the units under her command, which all unit commanders did, and the new battle setup was quickly realized and awaited for an enemy charge. Chapter 35. Let the battle start. On the chaos side, it was almost too hard to suppress the man, beast and other foul creatures from charging in, but with Kalik and a few other generals and heroes, it was a manageable affair. Though hearing shouts with a roar of a dragon managed to increase the battle lust of the troops even more, though this time it also fueled the lust of the commanding corps, and now that they saw few elite units were also present in the Slavic army, they could hardly contain themselves. Looks like they are ready for battle. Though we are at a disadvantage with that dragon present. Even with you Kalik here we need support, you can't take a hero and that dragon in the same time. The Kame said calmly as she surveyed the battlefield and the Slavic army that took new battle positions with Blood Knight in front of the infantry and hussars, taking the flanks, along with a few regiments of Cossacks, while wing hussars still keeping their positions in the air, only added by the mighty dragon. Do not worry. We are also getting a dragon soon to come, Lord Archaean is sending Smart to aid us. A female voice said with a battle lust oozing from her words. The female in question was a black-haired woman that was in traditional Japanese clothes with her katana sword strapped to her hip. Her blood-red eyes shining in delight at the upcoming battle and bloodbath that will follow. Hearing that news, the heroes and generals turned towards the woman that said that and couldn't help but grin at it. Though all the while the woman just had a creepy smile on her face. You are right, Otanabe Katsu, though we still need to prepare for the upcoming delight. Akame told her fellow samurai as she looked at all the generals and nodded her head as they all started to head towards the enemy while the army stayed in place. After all, it was only fair to offer the enemy to surrender first. Oda, Kalik and Kurum with me, we are going to listen to the demands of their surrender and accept it. Akame said with a dark chuckle as the leaders also gave off the laugh before the three girls mounted Kalik and moved towards the neutral ground to await the emissaries of Slavic forces. While the leaders were going to talk to the enemy, the army was making their own preparations and changing their battle positions to counter the new formation. The heavy spearmen were pulled to the front to keep the heavy Slavic cavalry from decimating its infantry, while axe and sword infantry was moved to the sides with Chaos Heavy Elite Cavalry, known as the Knights of Everlasting Night, were put on the flanks to destroy the lightly armored cavalry of the opposition, while being supported by a pack of undead dire wolves before they engage Blood Knights in an ultimate clash of Heavy Elite Cavalry. While monsters and other abominations were mixed with mainline to provide support and act as shock troops. The air was filled with bats, viverins, terrorgist, vargists, and other foul creatures. Though as the army was repositioning they heard a twin roar as the air was suddenly filled with chaos energy before a twin-headed dragon appeared in the sky. The dragon was pure black with acid dripping from its twin mouths, while his wings looked half destroyed. Even though the dragon looked like abomination, it still was extremely powerful and was a great addition to the morale of the army as it roared along with the chaos army at the battle and challenged towards their opponents who were eagerly waiting for a fight. And the Slavic side answered it with their own roar as both armies slowly started moving towards each other. Seeing the behemoth of a monster moving towards them, the army was in a state of full readiness in a blink of an eye. Though under the commands of their war leaders, the regiments relaxed their stance, that didn't stop them from being at the ready. And their leaders couldn't fault them for that as they were also at the ready. Though as they soon seen Kalik stopping in the midpoint between the armies and three figures jump off him, they understood what was the meaning of this. So after the short discussion, it was decided that Elsha, Issei, Laser, Lucy and Arnett to go to the meet point, with Laser and Lucy being bodyguards for Elsha and Issei. Not they needed it, and Arnett being there as a representative of the Valkyrie regiment, but it was still a bit easier in numbers. As both sides meet in the middle, Akane couldn't help but laugh at seeing who was opposing them, which made Issei growl and Lucy to be powered up and ready to unleash hell. Though as Issei saw who were there, he was shocked to feel an aura similar to Akane and a one very distinguished looking girl that was clearly from the looks of thing Japan eyes. Well, what do we have here? A little red dragon, a relic of the past, a wash-up heiress of the doomed clan, a holy warrior and a little Valkyrie. Not very interesting roster, I will admit. Akane said with a chuck as her company laughed a bit. Well, at least we are not a would-be assassin, with what I can see, and also would-be sister, followed by a Japanese-looking samurai, and an ugly as buck monster that is a coward, as much as he is large with a look that even his own mother wouldn't love. Al-Shakami said, making the chaos group stop laughing as they looked ready to kill for the insult they received. Especially Kalik, who didn't like being called a coward one tiny bit. "Watch your mouth, insect, I might show you how much of a coward I am when I flatten you and your puny army." Kalik said, well, more like thundered, as his voice was so loud and it shocks the whole valley as much as the dragon's roar did. "Well, ugly, I have some bad news for you. Someone here wants your head and wants to hang it on his trophy rack for what you did, and I'm telling you no, promising you that will happen before this day ends." Alsha said as she looked at the monster with cold and deadly eyes, which the huge monster just grinned as he knew about whom she was talking about. "Ah yes, Drake, I must say it's a pity you are sealed, your hatchlings were delicious, I only wished you had more." Kalik roared in amusements as Issei and Drake's rage grew even more as he powered up and prepared his dragon shoot, only to be stoked by Alsha holding his hand and lowering it down. "Not now, Issei. You too, Drake, wait a bit please." Alsha whispered to Issei, who growled but complied with her request. "Well, seeing as you came here, it's only reasonable for us to accept your surrender, so we will gladly accept it, of course. But you will have to execute the head of each regiment. If you do not comply, there is a battle that awaits us and your death either way. Pick your death." Kurum said as she unleashed her weapon that released a torrent of chaos energy. "Well, that is fine with us since we prefer death in battle than servitude. We will meet you all in battle." Laser said as he turned around and started to walk away with others. "Then the battle is." Akame said as and her group returned towards the army. All the while her eyes shined with bloodlust and eagerness to commence the bloodbath. This day would be one of the bloodiest since the last great human war. Leaders from both sides had some final words to their armies. It was a moment to march forward and to meet their enemy. As they were marching forwards, Issei couldn't help but think about what Elsha said to them before they moved to the battlefield. Flashback, as soon as they returned and after Elsha told the troops what happened and even made them laugh a bit, for a final morale boost, she called for Issei and the girls to come with her so that she could tell them a few things before the start of the battle that will forever change them. "What I'm about to say is not easy and will definitely be hard for you to deal it, especially if you never done this. But the moment you take a life away, you will never be the same." Elsha said as she looked at everyone, more specifically at Issei and Kendo duo, as they were still virgins in this bloody affair. "What do you mean, Elsha?" Murayama asked as she looked a bit lost at what Elsha was trying to say, while Caddis nodded her head as to confirm that she also didn't get what Elsha was talking about, while Issei was a bit uneasy about the topic. "What I'm saying is that among all of us here, you two along with Issei are still virgins," Elsha said, but as she guessed it, they didn't get what she was aiming for as the girls blushed, while Issei looked just confused. And seeing the confused look in Issei's eyes, the girls widened their eyes, mostly Kendo duo and Chelsea, as they didn't know about Lucy's surprising reward. Well, Lucy blushed a bit as guessed what the three girls thought. And as the trio were about to point out that, more like shout out, they were cut off by Elsha. "And no, I'm not saying in bed, so get your heads out of the gutter, I'm saying in a way of killing. And this is not to be taken lightly, is this understood?" Elsha seriously spoke, her cold and commander-like nature, quickly making them look at her in fear as they stood still like boards. They were quick to remember that in front of them was a dragon empress and a veteran of a deadly art of war that saw countless battles and fought in most if not all of them. Her voice, let alone her dangerous look, was enough to put them back in line. It was at this time that they remembered the look of dread at many of Norse gods when they spoke of her prowess and her power. The added bonus of being a commander of one of the strongest elite units of the two factions was only reserved for the most powerful and battle-hardened. If the group remembered correctly, only 5 people were stronger than her in her prime, and even, they still had trouble when facing her in a spar. 3 warriors of Slavic faction and 2 Valkyries of the Norse faction, but that was more than enough for the gods to give her the chance to lead their mighty armies into battle, and she delivered on their fate and trust, as she was a natural-born leader and a fighter. The booster gear only adding to her status as the true empress of the Red Dragon. The queen of battlefields. What Elsha is trying to say is that you never took a life, never killed a person, be it in self-defense, assassination or a fight. You are still green. And no, Issei, stray devils are more like monsters that are brainless and soulless, they are like worse the wild animals. Chelsea said, well, a bit shaken from the look that she received from Elsha, before calming herself and signing as she knew very well how she handled her first kill. It was not a pretty sight and she was not very proud of it. Was all that the trio said as they looked at a more informative answer, which was given by Arnett, who somehow managed to stay calm under the glare. Look at it like this, will ya? Well, you are like this, clean hands and a soul not tarnished with knowing you killed someone, even when you are extremely angry and wish for someone to die, that feeling will pass in a few moments. Well, if you are like us. Arnett paused to gesture towards the girls that killed already, and those were Elsha, Cassie, Lucy, Chelsea and herself. That anger will make you really start or try to kill as you already did it and would be just another one you took. The point of this is to tell you that when you finally do kill, not to take that lightly, as it will tarnish you and it will slowly become an enjoyment that will make you worse than even. Well, I will let you think about it. Arnett said her piece before she saluted towards Elsha, who returned the gesture and walked away towards her unit. Oh yeah, and whatever you do, Red Dragon Emperor, do not let your anger get to the point of that. Well, I do respect you and your power. If it comes to that, I will be the first one to attack you and try to kill you. Be it friend or foe. My concern is my squad and the victory in this battle, and I will do whatever it takes to achieve it. Even if it means killing you. Arnett said as her eyes flashed ruby red for a moment before she smiled and continued towards her unit, and making Issei gulp a bit at the creepy smile he received from the red-haired Valkyr. Partner, what Elsha was trying to tell you is that when you make your first kill, you will never be the same. You will lose your innocence, your hand will forever be dyed in blood, and your soul will forever be tainted with knowledge of killing someone. Drake explained, getting Issei and the Kendo duo to pause in their breathing, as this was something that they didn't know. Well, that is true, little Issei. Remember that there is a difference between killing in battle and just killing in general. In battle, you kill to survive and to keep your comrades alive, not for the sake of killing. Belzard spoke, surprising all of them since he didn't speak at all since their time at the Norse. And where were you this whole time, you crazy bastard? Issei asked as he felt a bit pissed that his teacher in martial arts was nowhere even when he was in his mind. Oh, that, I had a few things to sort out with some bastards. Nothing to worry about, really. Oh, and Elsha, I'm proud of you, and I wish you all the luck in the world. Belzard answered casually, making some to fall face first on the floor, while Elsha had her eyes wide, as she knew very well what Belzard was referring to. So that is why Issei didn't go ballistic when Colic was shown and when they were near each other. Elsha thought as she remembered how Issei was barely controlling himself. Well, with that sorted, and I do hope you realize what we wanted to say, it's time to position you in the battle lines. Elsha told them as she pointed towards Cassie, who looked at her with a question mark above her head. Cassie, you are a speedster and good with melee combat. I want you to be on the left flank with Arnett and her unit. When I give you a signal, you are to, along with her unit, enter the engagement and try to force as many enemies as you can to your position. If you feel that your position will be overrun, you are to ask for reinforcements, and I will try to send you some units to help. Understood? Elsha commanded, which Cassie nodded. Now, Chelsea, I want you to go wide and try to liquidate their artillery. They will prove troublesome if we let them fire for too long. Just a warning, the crew are chaos dwarfs that are magic resistant and extremely armored. They are stubborn as they come, and they are unbreakable, so you will need to kill them to the last. You will receive a unit of hussars to help you in this. Oh, do watch for enemy units that will guard them. They will probably be lightly armored, but still be careful. Hearing her orders, Chelsea nodded with a grin. Murayama, Cadis, I know this is going to be tough, but I want you two to stay and be with Royal Guards unit. I know you want to contribute, but, honestly, I don't know how well you will fare in this kind of battle, so try and keep the engagement with the enemy to a minimal, okay? If it's extremely necessary or you spot a weak point, alert the unit commander of it and they will deal with it. Elsha said. Well, it hurt her to say it, it was only for their own good, which the girls understood thankfully. Now, that leaves us with Lucy and Issei. Lucy, you are to be on the opposite flank of Cassie, use everything you have, and don't hold back at all. Those bastards are tougher than they look, trust me, I know, the same that I said to Cassie is applied to you, understand. On the right flank would be a few units of heavy axeman, try to smash enemy flank, and charge into the center when the flank is secure. You will receive a units of blood dragons after they finish their first charge to help deal with their enemy cav. Elsha explained, getting a nod from the heiress before the empress turned towards Issei. As for you, Issei, you will be with me at the central part. Well, I would like all of you to be somewhere else, this can't be done now. Your job is to support the middle along with me, we will be the main hitters and the prime target for the enemy. Use anything you can think of except that, oh yes, and if you are going to use that attack you practiced, give us a heads up. I would like it if I could at least minimize the losses from friendly fire. Understood. If you feel short on magic reserves or stamina, retreat and recover, then go back to fighting. This is also for all of you. If you feel exhausted, retreat and recuperate. There isn't a point of fighting if you are too tired even to lift your finger. Being brave and courageous doesn't mean that you don't retreat. What good would be all your bravado if you are dead because of it? Use your head, guys, this is no raiding game or stray devil hunt, this is war. With that done, the empress turned to leave before she remembered something. And a final thing, do not engage the enemy heroes at any cost, they are far more powerful than all of you, understood? If you are to engage with them, try to keep it to a minimum until someone from Slavic faction arrives to battle them. I do not care if your pride is hurt of anything else. Life is more important than that. Honor you can regain easily, life that is extremely hard. Now to battle positions, everyone. Elsha ordered as she started to move towards the center of the army with Issei beside her and the girls taking their own positions. Flashback end. Front line. Slavic faction army central position. Issei. Elsha. Are you ready, Issei? Alsha said as she was marching forward until she deemed a good distance. Yeah, as ready as I ever will be. Issei responded as he steeled himself for the upcoming battle. Do not worry, you will be fine, and think of this as your first ever true fight. Well, the battles you had with Riser and Kakabiel were real and dangerous, it's nothing in comparison to this. There you only needed to be concerned of one opponent, here you must worry about a lot more. If we manage to win this, I will personally reward you my king afterward. Elsha slyly said to him, before she moved towards him and leaned in as whispered some more enticing things to his ear, before biting his ear in a way, so that no one saw, not that she was concerned if anyone saw. As Issei's face now resembled the color of his balance breaker at what she told him. Seeing the look on his face and a bit of steam coming from his ears, Alsha laughed a bit at his reaction, before giving a few points for him to think about. Oh yeah, think of the orders I gave as a lection for how to give orders when you start to lead us in raiding games. The theory is good and all, but real combat and battlefield experience is something that no book or amount of study can teach you. Trust me on that, everyone here has experienced at least a dozen battles in their time. Even though some were and still are regular infantry or cavalry, they could if needed be led a small task force with ease. The battle proves that they have is enough. You see there? Alsha told him as she pointed towards the Blood Knights that are all in line with their commander Laser looking at them with a serious but fatherly gaze. Listen closely what he will say, a good leader knows how and when to inspire his troops. On and off the battlefield, that is why you sometimes see a few of the soldiers having a brawl here and there. It is not because they have an issue with one another, it's more about letting loose the stress and to lift their spirits. Now listen closely, Uncle Laser is one of the few people that are known to inspire people's hearts, and even after his fall. His words and his curse and order is still so strong in his people's minds that they obey it without a second thought or question. But his people obey it not out of fear, but out of respect and courage that he himself set about, a high standard for bravery and courage, when it was a time of great peril, and paid for in his own blood. Even Vito was moved when he heard it, and after that battle, he literally forced Vels to bring Laser to his court and was ready to go to war for a warrior like him. Vito is a man that respects bravery, cunning and strength, but above all else, he respects those that showed a warrior code. Those who would never point their swords or guns on the defeated or those who could not fight. Because he sees that as the ugliest form of humanity, and he himself wouldn't even blink before destroying anyone who did something like that. Alsha told him quietly. Humming a bit from imagining what Alsha said, Issei nodded his head before he looked over at the regiment of the Blood Knights that were eager to hear their commander. They all dismounted their steeds and form a solid line of flesh and iron that was a magnificent sight to see and in Issei's honest opinion a bit frightening. My sons, I will be honest with you as I was all this time. When I heard that those bastards are coming back, I volunteered our regiment to fight. I know that I committed all of you to this battle and a chance that you may lose your life for good this time. I will be the first to say, I fear what may happen. But I am not scared about my life. My life was gone the moment I entered the field of Kosovo on our Lord's Day, and I do not regret it one bit that my mortal body was destroyed. My regret is that I did not do enough on that day, didn't ensure more for our country, our people who even besides that magnificent battle, still look up to us, to be their guardians in battle. We are their hope and inspiration. Now as I look at the host that is threatening our lands again, I feel as that same fear from centuries ago is coming back. That we may fail in this battle. And it makes my blood go cold. If any of you have doubts about this, you are free to turn around and go back, I will not stop you or commend you on this. We are about to fight the bastards that killed our closest and dearest ones, and they do not know the word surrender and give up, they will kill you all if you falter for a second. So those that don't feel like it steps forward and I will send you home and forget about this all, you will not be judged by anyone, this is the royal decree of the last emperor. Laser spoke with a hard cold and clear voice that was heard by the whole army that stopped their talks to hear a veteran who was respected by all three sides of the faction. A veteran that even those who didn't come from his own homeland heard and some extremely lucky ones had a chance to see on the field of battle. And see the man's prowess in the art of war. He wasn't picked to be the leader of the elite regiment just because of his status during his life, he was picked because of his battle prowess and cunning abilities. And his men glared hard at Laser at this insult to their warrior code of Red Dragon and their holy vow to defend their homeland. Laser couldn't help but smile as he knew one thing about the regiment that he leads. They were bloody bastards, all of them, him included, that would rather fight alone on the battlefield against 10 armies than have anyone else fight in their stead. While they enjoy a good meal and a few shoots of rakia and wine, they were the elite of the elite for buck's sake, the best sodders that any faction would hold back to keep them for the worst situation. But to them what was the point of being an elite if you are sitting on your butt the whole day? They were born, raised and trained to fight like warriors, their DNK damned that they fight against anyone that threatened to claim their lands, and their blood and soul roared at them that anyone foolish enough to try to enslave their people take their homes, would pay with their own blood as it is a way of the warrior. They were the famed Knights of the Orthodoxy, a regiment that even after the fall of the Southern Realm, went to fight with their brothers on the East and West and help them in their troubled times, earning them the fame and respect from others while instilling fear into their enemies. But everyone knew that when they declare that they will take to the field there was nothing that can be said or done to prevent that from happening. Even Lord Vito once tried to prevent them from going, but it turned to be a big mistake, as they all declared that if he wished to stop them, he would need to defeat each and everyone from the regiment in an honorable duel, or to kill them all outright. And even Vito was not that confident to beat all of them, and he refused to kill his men. He loved every one of his soldiers and subjects like his own blood. He would be damned to kill the men that were like his own sons to him. But as it turned out, it was like the regiment had a sixth sense, as they later reported that they engaged a division of Spahia, an elite Ottoman Empire cavalry that was doing great damage to the infantry. The battle was a victory for the Slavic forces, and the destruction of the Spahia was a large bonus to the morale for the nations of the south. Since then, no one questioned when they chose to go to the field of battle and even send reinforcements to help them. So Lazar felt great relief when he told Milos to send his unit to combat and that he will see to it that the battle, if not won quickly, will last long enough for the 1st, 2nd and 4th armies of the Slavic faction to join the fray and deliver the death blow. Milos agreed instantly, as he knew how his lord, when they were still mortals, thought, and he fully agreed. Lazar knew that he would be at mercy of his troops' hard and few choice words that would be harder than a hit to the face or any other injury if he didn't agree to their silent but louder than a roar of a dragon request to take their bloody vengeance on those buckers that managed to tarnish their honor, and Lazar was with them and wanting to rip them apart 100%. He had no problem of having a brawl with his men, honestly, he preferred it over the words, but he knew his men and their bloody in it that even he had in spares. It was something that was like a blessing and a curse, that in it was so high in the realm of the south that it proved to be extremely beneficial in war times, but a damn curse in peace. Now I know you all, and I know that you all have a few nice and warm words for me for telling you this. But seeing you like this and being surrounded by this magnificent host, led by our own Empress of the Red Dragon with the current Red Dragon Emperor, I can tell you this, all of you who held your vows to me are of this day forward finished. Our vows were never to a leader, it was always for those who can't fight or are unable to fight. So set your heart, steel your nerves, and ready your body and soul. From today onwards, we don't fight for emperor, king, duke or any other man or title, even for our gods, we don't fight for them, we fight for what is behind us, our homes, our farms, our land, our old, our women, our children. So, let those foolish enough to face our might hear our resolve. Blast the war horns, sound the song of Prav, let the earth shake from our charge, let the wind bring fear to the enemy, and let the sun shine for our victory in a battle that hasn't been seen since the last incursion. The time for talk is over, now it's time to fight for the fatherland, Lazar shouted with all his might as the battle horns from all the units blasted in sync, while the warriors roared in approval at the words that held true in all of their hearts. The victory Dusan lifted his weapon high in the air and shouted as his troops started to pound the shields with their weapons while answering the cry. The victory, I didn't hear you maggots or you warriors or pussies. To victory Dusan shouted again, provoking them to let out an even mightier roar. The victory, do not forget my sons, the battle isn't won by the type of weapon you wield, but by the heart and soul, remember for what we are fighting for. Lazar shouted his final words that were the inspiration for the rest, who felt their morale hit the all-time max. Forward march, Elsha shouted as she decided it was time to battle, she didn't want to lose the adrenaline that was hitting everyone in the moral boost. Entering his balance breaker again and powering up, Issei felt his motivation to win in this bloody affair all-time high. He now understood what Elsha was talking about, and he was sure to use that for next time he needed to bring up the moral or to encourage someone before the fight. The army marched for a few moments before Elsha lifted her hand and made a fist, and as one the whole army stopped on a dime, taking their battle positions and battle formation. Spearmen making a phalanx-like formation, swordsmen and axemen a bit wider formation for an easy way to fight, while light cavalry making armed their bows and started to make a circular, while fully prepared to fire off their deadly load, and the elite heavy cavalry making a wedge formation with outer riders armed with lances and those in the middle with axes and swords with a ready. Slavic air forces along with Dragon following the suit of their earth counterparts and eagerly awaiting an order to charge the enemy. Artillery, I want you to aim for their heavy troops, spare no ammo, I want them dead before the blood knights even come close. Archers to the front, in down everyone that comes in rage, when you are out change to melee weapons and hit them hard. Do not engage if you have ammo. Here they come, someone shouted as they all saw that a few units from the enemy break rank and go on a crazy suicide charge. Hold the line, let them come to the kill zone, a Russian commander shouted to his troops. And as soon as those berserkers were enraged, the volley after volley of heavy rocket batteries and heavy arrowheads made quick work of enemy, leaving only corpses on the neutral ground. though the lasted only for a few moments before the Chaos Army went full charge and pushing the range units to their absolutely limit of firing, as the unending volley after volley was sent towards the enemy, who even with the loss of large number of men, beasts and other unthinkable monsters, pushed forward without the care for the losses that they suffered. So after one more load of heavy arrows were fired, the heavy Dvor archers and the Streltsy pulled back behind the blood dragons who started their own counter, supported by volley storm of magic and other projectiles, and the charge of those heavy armored knights was something that Issei will never forget. The charge was awe-inspiring, strong and terrific. The impact of the charge was so strong that the first row of the enemy was sent flying all the way back to the end of the enemy's army, while those who didn't suffer that nicer day were trampled by the beasts, while those who were somewhat standing were quick killed by the riders within a few moments of the impact. The battle was a gruesome affair for both sides. Both the Chaos and Slavic faction had huge causalities, though even with it the fighting was not over as the battle was still in the air. And to make things worse, the more reinforcements from both sides were entering to the field as the dead and injured keep stacking up. The only good thing for the Slavic forces were that they managed to get the upper hand in this battle, thanks to the early victories on the right flank, where the Blood Knights managed to engage the Chaos Elite Cavalry and force them in a sandwich between them and the heavy infantry that with now the help of their own elites, cut down the enemy, making the Chaos faction lose its top-tier troops. Though that is not to say that they died without causing a lot of casualties to the enemy. But even with a number of Sodders and even Blood Knights dead from the fighting the enemy, it was a small price to pay as the path to the enemy's flank was clear and the center was exposed to the attack. But the greatest victory that the armies of the three realms had was the utter destruction of the enemy's artillery that was from the start pounding them with its hellish payload. It was just as Elsha said, the artillery was guarded well with a few heavy units of Chaos warriors, but the tide of the battle and the destruction of the Chaos left flank forced those guards to reposition to hold off the assault of the Blood Knights and the Hussars that broke of the flanking force to attack the enemy in the rear, forcing them to hold their positions, while the Blood Knights smashed them to a bloody pulp. That left the crew alone, and the moment that they were left without protection was the moment where the Cossacks and Chelsea hit them hard. Even though they were artillery crews, they fought like they were the elite units. Even when they lost half of their men, they didn't show any kind of fear or waver. They even fought harder and deadlier. But even so, they were in the end slaughtered by the Cossacks. Though Chelsea would without a doubt say that she didn't want to face Chaos Dwarfs anytime soon again. Though that was before the right flank was forced to withdraw to their original position, as the whole army of Chaos appeared and instantly went on the offensive, forcing the slightly exhausted troops to start a fighting retreat. With Blood Knights and Hussars being a vanguard for the infantry to pull back and set up their formation. The valiantly fighting cavalry was in the end forced to break off from fighting as they were in danger of being surrounded, and that was not something that they planned. So as soon as the signal was given from their infantry that they were in position and formation, the mighty cavalry units withdraw from the fighting back through their lines to take some rest and to rearmed or to heal their injuries. Leaving their infantry to deal with the second wave of enemy. Though the break that Blood Knights and Hussars made was enough for the Slavic battle mages to heal and even recover stamina to their units, that would be the first line while the back line was healed after. While the situation on the right flank was in confusion, the left flank was extremely hard pressed with a huge number of enemies that were pouring from the magic circular that was sending endless numbers of fresh troops into the fray. And the left flank should have been destroyed a long time ago, if not for the resilience of the Valkyries and the intervention of the Perrin's Guard that managed to push back the enemy long enough for the Slavic reinforcements to arrive and form ranks and formations. The broken units that were forced to withdraw from the battle were quick to reform and in some cases to merge into a new unit, with what survived of the higher officers to take command of the newly formed units of infantry before going back to the front to fight off the enemy. Though even with them present it was still hard to keep the ground as the enemy was relentless in their assault. But the most important thing that happened was the air victory of the Wing Hussars and the Azdaja that even managed to kill the enemy dragon in a single combat. While the Sky Cavalry managed to win the air battle against the abominations that were without their dragon and its aura that kept the spawns of chaos alive, even with a death wound alive easy to get rid of. And that is not to mention the slaughter fest that was the central part of the battle. The place where the elites clashed was a place filled with blood, gore, and bodies. Even with all their might, Slavic center was slowly being pushed back, and Issei for his part was a bit confused as to why they were giving ground when they clearly had enough power to contest it and even maybe push them back a bit. But the more the battle was going, the more center let ground, and Issei could almost see the back of their flanks that still hold strong even after being pressured with monsters and other creatures of chaos. He could see and feel Lucy's, Cassie's, and Arnett's energy, and that has him a bit of calm, knowing that the girls are safe. The earlier saw Kendo duo behind him saw he knew that those two are also safe. Though he was a bit worried about Chelsea, but seeing that the artillery didn't peeper them was a sign that Chelsea did her job and was probably returning back. Elsha, why are we falling back? Issei shouted towards the battle empress as he saw her cleaving her way through the enemies, as if they were nothing more than annoyances than veterans of many battles. Don't worry Issei, you will see soon, Alsha shouted back before she blasted a few chaos marauders and warriors with a version of Issei's dragon shoot that she developed after witnessing the advantage of that attack. Deciding not to question her leadership of the battle that was raging, Issei focuses on the battle as he blasted a few bastards that were closing in on him while he was shortly distracted. Before he charged forward and started to slaughter his way through the enemy towards the behemoth that was also wrecking the Slavic forces in front of him. Alek was in a blissful state. He was doing what he loved the most, and that was slaughtering the weaklings that were in front of him trying to kill him. He was so into killing and swatting the annoying wing hussars that were trying to attack him from above with his tail. Alek heard the roar, and it sent a dark chill of pleasure down his dark-armored reptilian spine. It was someone that he was waiting for from the start of the battle to show up and to kill in a most pleasured way he knew, by hammering him down until nothing was left of the fool. Ahaha, finally you coward, I was getting bored of killing those insects, Kalek roared towards Issei, who was slaughtering his was trough the chaos warriors like hot knife through butter. Though what surprised Kalek was the dragon shoot to the face that stunned him and a powerful right hook to the face that even managed to send a 100t behemoth like him a few meters away and onto the ground. You are dead you spineless shit, Issei roared again as he gathered his attack that he used against Wolfric. Issei don't, Elsha shouted, but it was too late as Kalek used the time that Issei needed to power up to get up and send a powerful blow with his hammer, sending Issei flying all the way back to the Slavic backline that was surprised to see the Red Dragon Emperor hitting the ground in front of them and rolling backwards for a good few hundred meters back, while almost giving Murayama and Cadis a heart attack seeing him down with half of his armor destroyed and unmoving while bleeding profoundly from his mouth and eyes. Issei, let me know in the comments below if you guys want the next part. Also check out my other video that has been shown and left. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video please like and share this video. And have a fantastic day. Bye.